Chapter 1984. When Bailey Hongzhuang was talking about the characteristics of the limestone, her expression was extremely calm, as if everything was already in her mind, without the slightest bit of nervousness and apprehension. When Nangong Wu saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was so proficient in describing the effects of the limestone, her eyes couldn't help but be filled with a touch of surprise. Although she knew that this matter was related to the safety of Bailey Hongzhuang's parents, Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely be extremely attentive and serious when reading this book, but she didn't even think for a moment and directly said the results, which was really a little surprising. Then what about this? Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang understood so clearly, Nangong Wu also decided to test Bailey Hongzhuang properly. She wanted to know how much Bailey Hongzhuang had grasped. After all, the more Bailey Hongzhuang knew, the more she didn't need to repeat the content to Bailey Hongzhuang again, which could also save a lot of time. Facing Nangong Wu's questions, Bailey Hongzhuang explained the attributes and effects of these materials one by one. Recently, she had been remembering the names, characteristics, and attributes of these medicinal materials. One must know that the middle-aged uncle in the chaotic world was not a person to be trifled with. If she didn't remember it and couldn't answer the middle-aged uncle's questions well, the middle-aged uncle would give her a certain punishment. This kind of punishment was not pleasant, so in order to avoid such a punishment and to save her parents, Bailey Hongzhuang could be said to be extremely serious in recording everything. Nangong Wu asked about several materials in a row, and Bailey Hongzhuang answered them all in an orderly manner. The more she asked, the more shocked Nangong Wu was. Although Bailey Hongzhuang had read some books, she didn't have a physical reference. How could Bailey Hongzhuang remember so clearly? At this moment, Nangong Wu couldn't help but feel that Bailey Hongzhuang was really too abnormal. Previously, when she heard Yulin Feng say that Bailey Hongzhuang had special attainments in many aspects, although she was surprised, it was far from the shock that Bailey Hongzhuang gave her now. One must know that the time she took to remember these materials was very short. It was precisely because of this that everyone said that she had special attainments in this aspect. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had used even less time than her, but she had remembered more than her. This was simply too much to make people speechless. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang was a genius, the strength that she displayed was too shocking. Nangong Wu only felt that the word genius wasn't enough to describe Bailey Hongzhuang's strength. She was simply a demon. She couldn't understand how Bailey Hongzhuang could remember all of this. Originally, she had intended to introduce these materials to Bailey Hongzhuang so that she could feel some sense of accomplishment. However, at this moment, after facing Bailey Hongzhuang, she didn't feel any sense of accomplishment, only a strong sense of defeat. This was too perverse. Yulin Feng was abnormal. So be it. She never thought that the disciple he found would be so abnormal. Nangong Wu was really speechless at this moment. She really couldn't find any sense of accomplishment. She only felt that she was nothing. If Bailey Hongzhuang had studied explosives for a little longer, her results would have far surpassed hers. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the originally happy Nangong Wu, and her expression suddenly changed. Her eyes couldn't help but have a touch of doubt. Chapter 1985. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Nangong Wu in confusion. She didn't understand why Nangong Wu's expression suddenly became dejected in such a short period of time. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's blank expression, Nangong Wu helplessly waved her hand and said, "Nothing. I was just thinking in such a short period of time. How did you manage to memorize so much content? It's really amazing." Nangong Wu's expression recovered very quickly. In a short period of time, she was once again full of smiles. Although she felt a sense of defeat previously, after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's huge improvement, she was very happy in her heart. In this way, her explosive skills would have a successor in the future. After all, she could only improve when she communicated with someone who was better at explosive skills. If Bailey Hongzhuang was really a person who didn't have any talent in explosive skills, then she still wouldn't be interested. Hearing Nangong Wu's words, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly, but in her heart, she felt a little guilty. If she only looked at those few books, she wouldn't be able to make such a judgment. However, who asked her to have such a heaven-defying cheat like the chaos ring? Hongzhuang, looking at you, you seem to have memorized most of these materials. Nangongwu slowly said. She had already asked Bailey Hongzhuang a lot of materials in this area previously, and Bailey Hongzhuang was able to answer her accurately. In this way, they could save a lot of time in this aspect, and use it mainly to make explosives. If you have any materials that you don't know, you can ask me. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, indicating that she understood. She knew all the materials in this explosives workshop. This was because the Chaos Ring had more materials. There were even many materials that were not in the explosives workshop, but in the Chaos Ring, there were many materials that were not in the explosives workshop. Mistress, I know most of the materials here. Why don't we make explosives? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with interest. Until now, although she knew most of these materials, she had never made explosives before. After understanding this content, she felt that counting explosives was a very strange skill. According to the middle-aged uncle in the Chaos Ring, when their explosives count reached a certain level, cultivators could make extremely powerful explosives. They could even integrate their own martial arts into the explosives to continuously increase the power of the explosives. Bailey Hongzhuang was very curious about this point. When cultivators were in a battle, they were most worried that they didn't have enough elemental energy and couldn't support it. If they could integrate their martial arts into the explosives beforehand, then it would be no different from others. They would have more elemental energy than others. In this way, their chances of winning would be much higher. Almost at the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang knew that this was an excellent opportunity. If she could master this kind of explosives, then she would undoubtedly have another tyrannical trump card in the future. However, she had not even made the most basic explosives yet. It was undoubtedly extremely difficult to make that kind of explosives. However, as long as there was hope, Bailey Hongzhuang would not give up. She had understood the use of explosives and the identification of materials for so long, so she was very interested in making explosives. Chapter 1986. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to try making explosives by herself after reading a few books, Nangongwu couldn't help but be shocked. You want to start making explosives now? In the beginning, when Nangongwu was learning explosives, she also had the courage to try it for the first time after understanding all the materials and the process of making explosives. Moreover, when she tried for the first time, she was accompanied by her master. She didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang's courage was even bigger than her. Now she just read a few books, and she already dared to start making explosives. However, she liked it. She liked this kind of cultivator who dared to do things. If they were timid and stagnant, they would not be able to achieve excellent results. On the contrary, if they just did what they thought, they might have unexpected results. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Nangongwu. Perhaps her current approach was a bit shocking. After all, in the eyes of Nangongwu, she just read a few books, and now she wanted to make explosives. Perhaps in the eyes of the master's wife, she was a bit too unreliable. However, for the current Bailey Hongzhuang, what she needed most was to save time. Therefore, even now, her actions were somewhat shocking in the eyes of Nangongwu, but she still had to do it. Many things were simply unexplainable. Just like in the eyes of many people, she had mastered medical skills, alchemy skills, and inscription techniques. This was something that others could not understand at all. In this case, she didn't mind shocking the world. Some geniuses couldn't be explained by common sense. She believed that when she did it, she didn't need to explain anything anymore. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and said, "Yes, I want to try making it myself." Hearing this, Nangongwu smiled and said, "Okay, then you can try it. I will help you watch by the side. If there is any problem, I will stop you at the first time. I won't let any danger happen." Nangongwu's expression was full of affection and appreciation. Now she only felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was more and more in line with her character. When a beginner made explosives for the first time, there needed to be a veteran to watch by the side because explosives were originally a very dangerous thing. If there was even the slightest deviation, it could lead to an explosion, which could harm him. Regardless of whether Bailey Hongzhuang was full of confidence in herself or just wanted to try it herself, she needed to watch from the side. If Bailey Hongzhuang really had the confidence to make explosives successfully, then she was naturally extremely happy, because this proved that Bailey Hongzhuang had a strong talent in this area. If Bailey Hongzhuang didn't have confidence, but just couldn't resist the impulse to try it, then she could stop Bailey Hongzhuang to realize that this was not a simple thing and continue to learn humbly. Seeing that Nan Gongwu didn't doubt her at all, but was very happy to let her start making explosives, Bailey Hongzhuang was also a little surprised. However, after thinking about it carefully, she already understood. The character of her master's wife was different from others. Chapter 1987. After confirming that Bailey Hongzhuang was going to try making explosives by herself, Nan Gongwu stood quietly at the side and watched Bailey Hongzhuang prepare. Bailey Hongzhuang took out the materials needed to make explosives one by one in front of her. Whether it was grinding or baking, Bailey Hongzhuang began to make them one by herself. Although she had not started making explosives under the guidance of the middle-aged uncle in the Chaos Ring, she had seen the middle-aged uncle demonstrate a few times. The middle-aged uncle explained the process of making explosives to her very clearly, and she remembered everything clearly in her heart. Originally, if she continued to learn in the chaos world, she could also start making explosives. However, since the mistress had come to look for her, she would try making explosives in the real world first. After returning to the Chaos Ring at night, she should perform better. After all, the middle-aged uncle this time was extremely powerful. If she failed in making explosives, she would be punished. Therefore, she would try it out in the real world first so that she could avoid physical pain. The three beasts stood quietly at the side. They naturally wanted to help their mistress, but in this situation, it was better to pretend that they did not know anything. Nan Gongwu thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would have some problems in the process of making these materials. Thinking back to the first time she made explosives, she had studied explosives for a longer time than Bailey Hongzhuang. When she tried to make explosives for the first time, she had memorized all the steps in her heart. However, when she really tried it out, there were still many mistakes. This was because there was always a difference between imagination and actual operation. However, so far, Bailey Hongzhuang's production had not made any mistakes. Although her movements were much slower than hers, it was already very good that she did not make any mistakes. Practice makes perfect. As long as she did not make any mistakes when making explosives, it was understandable to spend more time. As Bailey Hongzhuang became more and more skilled, the time could be shortened. Bailey Hongzhuang memorized every step and carried it out one by one in an orderly manner. This was also thanks to Bailey Hongzhuang being an alchemist and an inscription master. She had already developed this kind of methodical character when she was learning these things before. No matter what she was doing, she would not be careless. Therefore, even though it was her first time producing, she was not in a hurry. Finally, in the process of slowly mixing the materials, Bailey Hongzhuang was finally able to mix all the materials. Next, it was time for Bailey Hongzhuang to make the explosives. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but close her eyes. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's actions, Nan Gongwu's eyes were filled with doubt. She didn't understand what Bailey Hongzhuang was doing all of a sudden. Compared to Nan Gongwu's confusion, the three beasties seemed to understand a lot more. They had been by Master's side for so long and had a certain understanding of Master's actions. Right now, Master was sorting out all the contents. She would only choose to make a move after Master had thought it through. This kind of situation would also occur when the Master was refining a higher-grade pill. Bailey Hongzhuang closed her eyes and thought about the process of the middle-aged man making explosives. Chapter 1988. However, she needed to remember everything clearly to ensure that there wouldn't be any problems during the production. After all, she wasn't alone here. Master's wife was here too, and so were the three beasts. If there were any problems, it would be really bad. After a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang opened her eyes. She had already thought through all the contents clearly in her mind. Now, She was going to make the explosives according to the middle-aged uncle's method of making explosives. Nan Gongwu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's actions, and her heart was filled with admiration. Regardless of whether Bailey Hongzhuang could successfully make the explosives, at least she didn't make any mistakes when she prepared these materials. Every explosive would fail the first time it was made. As long as she made it a few times, she would be able to succeed. Now, she only felt that she wouldn't be bored when she was developing explosives in the future. With Bailey Hongzhuang's talent, as long as she was willing to study hard, she believed that it wouldn't take long for her to have excellent results in this area. Perhaps, in the future, she could discuss the progress of explosives with Bailey Hongzhuang. Usually, she always studied these by herself, and it was too boring. Now that she had someone close to her to study with her, it was really something to be happy about. In making explosives, the weight of the powder was also very particular. Whether it was a little more or a little less, it could cause a completely different effect. Only with perfect accuracy could the explosives be made successfully. Bailey Hongzhuang weighed the materials with a precision instrument. However, the production of explosives mainly depended on the materials and the specific gravity, which was very difficult. However, during the real production, the mental power consumed was indeed much less than the number of inscriptions and alchemy skills. This was because she only needed to follow a certain order and put the materials together, and the explosives could be made successfully. As long as there weren't any mistakes along the way, there wouldn't be too much of a problem. Therefore, although it was Bailey Hongzhuang's first time making explosives, she was full of confidence in herself. The explosives workshop fell into silence. Bailey Hongzhuang kept adding materials inside, and Nan Gongwu was watching from the side. She found that Bailey Hongzhuang's measurement of the materials was very accurate. Regarding this point, she also understood that Bailey Hongzhuang's previous study of inscription technique was also helpful to this point. In Nan Gongwu's opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang was likely to succeed in making the explosives this time. Thinking of this, Nan Gongwu could not help but be a little surprised. The book that was given to Bailey Hongzhuang did indeed contain the method of making the most common explosives. However, the fact that Bailey Hongzhuang could remember everything so clearly and complete it step by step was truly amazing. As time slowly passed, Bailey Hongzhuang's every movement was extremely careful. Finally, under this configuration, Bailey Hongzhuang successfully completed the production of the explosives. When the three beasts saw this scene, their hearts that had been hanging in the air were finally put at ease. After all, the fact that the explosives didn't explode during the process was already a good result. Do you think Master has succeeded? Xiao Hei's eyes sparkled with curiosity. Chapter 1989. She should be able to succeed. Little White pondered for a moment before speaking. However, her tone was still filled with uncertainty. After all, this was Master's first time making explosives. Although it was full of confidence in Master's abilities, it wasn't certain if she would succeed on her first try. Moreover, although it was watching Master's process, it didn't know how to succeed. Master will definitely succeed. Compared to Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai's uncertainty, Baisher was full of confidence in Bailey Hongzhuang. To Baisher, he was full of blind worship and confidence in Bailey Hongzhuang. He believed that as long as Master made a move, she would definitely succeed. Nan Gongwu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with admiration. Although she felt that Bailey Hongzhuang might succeed this time, when Bailey Hongzhuang actually succeeded, she still felt an indescribable surprise in her heart. Hongzhuang, I didn't expect you to succeed on your first try. It's really shocking. Nan Gongwu's face was full of smiles. She finally understood that Yu Linfeng's disciples' talent far surpassed ordinary cultivators in terms of cultivation and other aspects. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang continued to develop like this, her future would definitely be limitless. At this moment, Nan Gongwu only felt that the Lan family was really unlucky. Although she heard that Lan Qingyin's strength was also very good, in her opinion, Lan Qingyin was nothing compared to Bailey Hongzhuang. If Bailey Hongzhuang had the same cultivation environment as Lan Qingyin since young, then Bailey Hongzhuang's achievements would definitely be much stronger than the younger generation. Unfortunately, the Lan family liked to pick up sesame seeds and throw away watermelons. Not to mention Bailey Hongzhuang, Lan Yunxiao was also much better than his older brother, Lan Jingquan. If Lan Yunxiao's family didn't have this unforeseen event, then the Lan family's strength would definitely be much stronger than it was now. When she thought of Lan Jingquan, she felt that he was really a good-for-nothing. For his own fame and status, he could even harm his younger brother's family. He was really shameless to the extreme. She didn't have any good impression of the Lan family. Yu Linfeng had also suffered unfair treatment in the Lan family, which was why he left. Thus, she only hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang could become better and better. When Bailey Hongzhuang was strong enough to appear in front of others again, she also wanted to see how the Lan family's expressions would be. Although all this didn't happen to her, she could empathize with Bailey Hongzhuang. To Bailey Hongzhuang's Bailey Hongzhuang, Bailey Hongzhuang's family's family, Bailey Hongzhuang to Bailey Hongzhuang. With Bailey Hongzhuang's personality, as long as she suffered the slightest grievance, she would definitely repay it in every possible way. It was too difficult for her to act as if nothing had happened. However, since Yu Linfeng wasn't willing to do so, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't want to force him. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance gave her some hope. Since she couldn't avenge Yu Linfeng, then she could avenge Bailey Hongzhuang. With her personality that abhorred evil, she only wanted to let the Lan family taste the consequences of their excessive actions. Hearing Nangong Wu's words, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but reveal a smile. Chapter 1990. I also didn't expect to succeed. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Although she was only making the simplest type of explosive, but no matter what, there was always an indescribable joy in making it for the first time. Hongzhuang, you are really a genius. Nangong Wu was not stingy with her praise. Over the years, she had seen many talented people in this area. However, to be able to successfully make explosives in just a few days like Bailey Hongzhuang, other than Bailey Hongzhuang, there was no one else. Listening to Nangong Wu's praise, Bailey Hongzhuang felt ashamed. She was very clear in her heart that if it wasn't for the guidance of the middle-aged uncle, just relying on those few books was far from enough. However, since the master's wife had already decided, she would not explain anymore. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang didn't speak, Nangong Wu only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was embarrassed by her praise. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang's temperament was usually very modest. She was definitely not a playboy. Hongzhuang, since you have successfully made this explosive, why don't we go and test the power of this explosive? Nangong Wu's eyes were filled with excitement. She had seen Bailey Hongzhuang's process of making the explosive. There was basically no problem. Presumably, the power of the explosive was also not bad. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. In fact, she still had some doubts about the explosive that she made. According to the book that Nangong Wu gave her, the amount of weight was slightly different from the amount that the middle-aged uncle taught her. She didn't know who was right and who was wrong, but according to her understanding of the Chaos Ring, she felt that the method in the Chaos Ring might have a better effect. After all, her inscription technique was like this. Master's wife, where are we going to check the power of the explosive? Although what she made was only the lowest grade of explosives, but now that they were in Limitless Palace, if she were to directly throw out the explosives, she was afraid that it would cause a group of disciples to be surprised. After all, no one would dare to cause such a huge commotion in Limitless Palace. Those who didn't know would think that someone was attacking Limitless Palace. This kind of thing couldn't be done. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's worried expression, Nangong Wu smiled and said, "With me here, don't tell me there isn't a place to experiment. I often make explosives on a daily basis. In order to make it convenient for me to test the effects of explosives, your master specially prepared a place for me to test the power of explosives." Nangong Wu waved at Bailey Hongzhuang and walked out. Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasties followed behind Nangong Wu and walked towards the back of the explosives workshop. Originally, Bailey Hongzhuang thought that the location of the explosives workshop was extremely far back. She never thought that there would be another place behind the explosives workshop. The three beasties' eyes revealed a look of curiosity. They didn't expect that there were so many places in Limitless Palace that they didn't know about. From this, it could be seen that Yulin Feng really doted on Nangong Wu. He actually prepared so many things for her. Bailey Hongzhuang followed behind Nangong Wu for a distance. Finally, an open space appeared in front of her. Chapter 1991. It was obvious that Nangong Wu often tested the power of the explosives here, which was why this place was in such a mess. Bailey Hongzhuang had just walked to the place where the explosives were tested, and she knew that there was a soundproof array here. No matter how big the commotion was, no sound would leak out. In this way, they could peacefully test the power of the explosives here. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but sigh. Master had really prepared everything for his wife. It's here. Nangong Wu's face was filled with a satisfied and proud smile. I usually test the power of the explosives here. There's an array here that your master specially set up for me, and it has a soundproof effect. In this way, no matter how we test the explosives here, no one will listen. Nangong Wu smiled as she introduced. Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face was filled with a happy smile. Master is really thoughtful for his wife. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the smile on Nangong Wu's face became even brighter. One of the things that she was most proud of in her life was being able to be together with Yulin Feng. No matter if it was in the past or now, Yulin Feng had always been extremely good to her. As a woman, this was her greatest happiness. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Nangong Wu's happy expression, and the smile in her eyes deepened. Speaking of which, Master and his wife were really a pair of lovers that everyone envied. Nangong Wu noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze, and her face couldn't help but turn red. As an elder, she actually said such words in front of the younger generation. She really didn't know shame. Nangong Wu immediately straightened her expression and said, "Let's start now." The three beasties saw Nangong Wu's expression change in an instant, and a smile of understanding appeared on their faces. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally understood as well, but Nangong Wu's true nature was really cute. Sometimes, she felt that such a cute mistress didn't seem like an elder at all, but a peer instead. All right, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and immediately walked into the array. Nangong Wu and the three beasties stood outside the array, and Bailey Hongzhuang also retreated after igniting the explosives. This array not only had the effect of isolating sound, it could also prevent the power of the explosives from leaking out. However, the array's range was huge, and with the power of Bailey Hongzhuang's explosives, it was obviously not enough to activate the array. Bang! A huge explosion rang out, and a deep crater quickly appeared on the ground within the array formation. Smoke and dust spread everywhere, blurring everyone's eyes. Looking at the result of the explosions, Bailey Hongzi's eyes, Bailey Zhuang's eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang's, after all, it was her first time making explosives, and to be able to produce such power already made her extremely satisfied. However, Nangong Wu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment. The effect of the explosives caused her heart to be filled with doubt and puzzlement. How is this possible? Nangong Wu looked at the scene in front of her in a daze. Bailey Hongzhuang's first time making was the simplest type of explosives, and she had also made the same type of explosive for the first time in the past. However, the explosives she had made then weren't as strong as Bailey Hongzhuang's, and it was barely half of Bailey Hongzhuang's explosives. Chapter 1992. After the three beasties saw the effect of the explosives made by Bailey Hongzhuang, their hearts couldn't help but be filled with deep joy. I knew it. Based on Master's abilities, there wouldn't be any problems. White Lion puffed out its chest as its eyes filled with pride. It had always believed that its master would be able to complete it. Reality had told it that it was never wrong to believe in its master. Xiaohe and Xiaobai were overjoyed as well. Even though they had been a little worried that their master would not be able to complete it successfully, the joy in their hearts grew even stronger after witnessing this scene. Master is really amazing. She managed to complete it in such a short period of time. Xiaohei's heart was filled with excitement. Even though its master had been learning from a middle-aged uncle in the Chaos Ring, this time was still very short. It believed that even if other cultivators received the same treatment as its master, they would still not be able to catch up to its master. That's right. Perhaps Master could personally create such a powerful explosive and turn Yu family upside down. Once it thought of this, Xiaobai could not help but feel excited. The Yu family members were extremely detestable. Even if they could not attack the Yu family now, they would be happy to see the Yu family being affected and thrown into chaos when they were rescuing their master's parents. After all, the Yu family had been arrogant for so many years. It was time for them to suffer the consequences of their actions. When Bailey Hongzhuang heard Nangong Wu's words, her pitch-black almond-shaped eyes could not help but fill with suspicion. She had felt that the power of her explosives was not too bad. Why would Mistress say that? Could it be that there was a problem with the explosives that she had created? Mistress, what's wrong with my explosives? Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but ask. When she heard Bailey Hongzhuang's question, Nangong Wu did not reply immediately. Instead, she walked into the formation. She had been standing quite far away earlier on and had only seen the power of the explosion from afar. She had not been able to see it clearly. However, when Nangong Wu walked closer and saw the gigantic crater, her heart could not help but gasp in surprise. She had not seen wrongly. The power of this explosion was much stronger than the simplest explosives. Hongzhuang, how did you make these explosives? Nangong Wu couldn't help but ask. Previously, she had noticed that the materials Bailey Hongzhuang had prepared were nothing special. They were the most basic materials used for explosives. Moreover, she saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had used the same amount of materials in the first few batches. At that time, she saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was very careful with every step she took, and there was no difference in the amount of food she took. She was relieved and did not continue watching. In her opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang was not only an alchemist but also an inscriptionist. Therefore, she was particularly sensitive to the weight of materials. There would be absolutely no problem. But why was the explosive made by Bailey Hongzhuang stronger than ordinary explosives when they were made of the same material? Nangong Wu felt as if she had seen an opportunity. In the past, she had only thought that the effects of the most ordinary explosives would be the same. However, after Bailey Hongzhuang had tried it today, she had actually opened up a new world. It was simply too surprising. I made it according to the normal situation. Mistress, is there a problem? Chapter 1993. Previously, she had already noticed that some of the materials mentioned in the book were different from the materials that the middle-aged uncle taught her. After thinking for a moment, she still followed the middle-aged uncle's instructions to make the explosives. After all, she also wanted to know the difference between the method that the middle-aged uncle taught her and the method of making ordinary explosives. Now that she saw her master's wife's reaction, she knew that the difference did exist, and the difference was not small. If not, her master's wife would definitely not reveal such a serious expression. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's puzzled expression, Nangong Wu was even more puzzled. She felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's process of making explosives must be different from ordinary methods. Otherwise, the difference in explosives would definitely not be so big. Hongzhuang, the explosives you made are twice as powerful as the most basic explosives. Nangong Wu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a serious expression. It was clearly the same material, but it had such a different effect. If she knew where the problem was, she would have a better research direction. In the past, she had never been able to find a direction. How could she increase the power of the explosives? This had been troubling her for many years. However, the explosives that Bailey Hongzhuang made today gave her a completely different feeling. It was as if she had discovered a new continent, which made her extremely happy. Following Nangong Wu's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart could not help but be shocked. Although she only thought that there was a difference in the production, she never thought that there would be such a huge difference in the power. Nangong Wu could not help but walk to Bailey Hongzhuang's side and directly grab Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. Her bright and beautiful face was filled with anticipation and eagerness. Hongzhuang, tell me in detail, how did you make the explosives just now? Nangong Wu nervously looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. hoping that Bailey Hongzhuang could still clearly remember the manufacturing process. You have to tell me the steps of your production clearly. Don't leave out anything. Over the past few days, I've been researching how to increase the power of explosives with other explosives masters, but we haven't been able to find a good way. I didn't expect the explosives you made this time to be twice as powerful as ordinary explosives. If we can find out where the problem lies and apply it to a higher level of explosives, then its power will be greatly increased. Nangong Wu couldn't help but tell Bailey Hongzhuang the importance of this matter. Only in this way would Bailey Hongzhuang think about it carefully. When the three beasties heard Nangong Wu's words, they were even more surprised. I didn't expect that the first explosive that Master made would have such an amazing effect. It seems that Master is really a genius. I didn't think that the explosives that Master refined would be so powerful. It seems that Master's attainments in the art of explosives will be very shocking in the future. Xiaohei couldn't help but sigh. Previously, it didn't think that this was very impressive. However, after hearing Nangong Wu's words, it completely understood. The things in the Chaos Ring are indeed amazing. It's best for Master to learn from that middle-aged uncle. Xiaobai slowly said. Chapter 1994. Looking at Nangong Wu's nervous expression, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately nodded and told Nangong Wu the entire process. Especially when it came to the subtle differences, Bailey Hongzhuang was even more careful. You said that the ratio of the sky art and stone powder is 5 grams. With Nangong Wu's understanding of explosives, she immediately reacted when Bailey Hongzhuang mentioned the slight difference. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I put in 5 grams. Did I put in the wrong amount? Bailey Hongzhuang's face pretended to be confused, as if she really had just remembered wrongly and accidentally put in too much. You should put in 4 grams of sky art and stone powder. Nangong Wu curiously looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, only to see Bailey Hongzhuang's puzzled expression. It didn't seem like she was faking it. I always thought it was 5 grams. Bailey Hongzhuang's face revealed a vexed expression, as if she was dissatisfied with herself for remembering wrongly. However, Nangong Wu was extremely excited. You made a mistake. If you didn't make a mistake by accident, how could we have made such a discovery? Nangong Wu's face was full of smiles. Go on. Tell me about the weight of the other materials. In the end, Nangong Wu found that when Bailey Hongzhuang was making the explosives, there is a difference in the amount of 2 materials that caused such a change. So, it's because of the difference in the amount of sky art and stone powder and sulfate stone powder. Nangong Wu's eyes shone brightly, as if the sky was filled with stars, shining brightly. Hongzhuang, I have to go back and do some research. If I find anything, I'll come to you. Perhaps whether or not we can successfully make the explosives this time depends on this opportunity. You should go back and cultivate. After saying that, Nangong Wu didn't care about Bailey Hongzhuang behind her. She turned and ran towards the direction of the explosives workshop. She really couldn't wait to try it out. In the past, she only thought about what materials to add to increase the power. She never thought that changing the ratio of materials would cause a difference in power. Now, she only felt that her heart was filled with inspiration and endless possibilities. She had to experiment properly. Looking at Nangong Wu leaving just like that, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. Master's wife's impulsive personality obviously wouldn't change in this lifetime. The 3 beasts stared blankly as Nangong Wu disappeared from their sight at lightning speed. Their expressions were lifeless and helpless. Master, we now? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Let's go back to the palace. Master's wife won't be coming to find us for a while. I'll take advantage of this time to study more. To Bailey Hongzhuang, she also looked forward to having more time to learn from the middle-aged uncle. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately returned to the bedroom with the 3 beasts. Then, she immediately entered the Chaos Ring. She had already learned about the materials and the manufacturing process from the middle-aged uncle. She believed that the middle-aged uncle would start to let her learn how to make explosives. Yulin Feng didn't know what had happened. Nangong Wu suddenly went into seclusion and stayed in the explosives workshop without sleeping or resting. He had gone to take a look before, but was chased out by Nangong Wu in a flustered and exasperated manner. Seeing this, Yulin Feng was shocked. He didn't expect to see Nangong Wu in such a state again after so long. Chapter 1995. To the current her, creating powerful explosives was very important. Raising her own strength was also very important. Now that she finally had the chance to rescue her parents, she definitely couldn't just wait by the side. She had to join the action. Moreover, once she appeared, she believed that her parents would definitely recognize her. After all, when her grandfather first saw her, he was extremely shocked. Presumably, she looked similar to her grandmother. Presumably, she also looked very similar to her mother. In this way, as long as her parents saw her, they would definitely recognize her. If she wanted to rescue two living people like this, it would be very easy for the Yu clan to find out. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had already thought of a way to deal with it. As long as she brought her parents into the Chaos Ring, it would be much easier for them to leave. Time slowly passed. With each passing day, Bailey Hongzhuang's understanding of explosives was rapidly increasing. Bang! On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang had just come out of Chaos Ring when she heard an explosion. Her eyes couldn't help but be filled with astonishment. This explosion was extremely loud and clear. Even the entire Limitless Palace was shaken by this explosion. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately walked out of the palace and looked towards the direction of the explosion. Smoke and dust filled the air. The unique smell of explosives quickly spread out. Other than Nangong Wu's explosives workshop, where else would there be such a commotion? Master's wife, did you blow up the explosives workshop? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with bewilderment. If Mistress wanted to test the power of the explosives, she could totally go to the testing area at the back. However, the place where the explosion happened was obviously where the explosives workshop was located. Could it be that there was a problem? The three beasties looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. Nangong Wu's actions are a little too frightening, right? Xiaohei swallowed a mouthful of saliva. It was already late at night. Most likely, all the cultivators who were resting would have been awakened. This is the rhythm of blowing up the Limitless Palace. I'm guessing the others are also dumbfounded. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't hesitate to rush in the direction of the explosives workshop. If the master's wife accidentally exploded while making the explosives, it would be terrible. Just by looking at the commotion, one could tell how powerful the explosives were. If they had accidentally exploded, then Mistress would not have been able to leave in time. As Bailey Hongzhuang quickly left, the three beasts followed closely behind Bailey Hongzhuang and flew forward. While Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasties were rushing over, there was another figure who was even faster than them. That was Yulin Feng. Nangong Wu had stayed in the explosives workshop for so many days. Although Yulin Feng felt helpless, he knew that if he disturbed Nangong Wu at this time, Nangong Wu would definitely be unhappy. However, he never thought that such an unforeseen event would occur. Not only that, the power of the explosives this time was much stronger than any of the explosives that Nangong Wu had tested in the past. If there was any danger, Yulin Feng couldn't imagine what would happen. However, when Yulin Feng arrived at the explosives workshop, the scene he saw filled him with helplessness. Bailey Hongzhuang followed closely behind Yulin Feng. However, when she saw the scene in front of her, her feelings were no different from Yulin Feng's. Chapter 1996. Ha ha! I've finally made such a powerful explosive. Nangong Wu's face was char-black. The smoke and dust had already covered her face, but it couldn't cover her excitement. I never thought that Nangong Wu, would actually be able to make such a powerful explosive. I'm really excited, ha! Nangong Wu laughed as she sighed. Even though her face was covered with dust, her eyes were unprecedentedly bright. Nangong Wu saw Yulin Feng and Bailey Hongzhuang and quickly rushed over. She smiled and said, Lin Feng, Hongzhuang, I've succeeded. I've finally succeeded. Yulin Feng didn't care about Nangong Wu's happiness. After carefully inspecting Nangong Wu's body, he finally relaxed after discovering that there weren't any injuries on her body. I'm not injured, don't worry, Nangong Wu said. Hearing this, Yulin Feng felt even more helpless. With such a mischievous wife, he was also extremely helpless. Hong Zhuang, what do you think about the power of my explosive? It should be able to cause quite a commotion in the Yu clan, right? Nangong Wu said excitedly. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Nangong Wu, who was dancing with joy in front of her. At the same time, she was also a little touched. At this kind of time, Mistress was still thinking about how to cause a commotion in the Yu clan. This commotion is very big. All the disciples of Limitless Palace have been awakened by this commotion. Bailey Hongzhuang said. Previously, when she was rushing to the explosives workshop, she saw the disciples of the various palaces walking out of their sleeping quarters one after another. They looked at the direction of the explosives workshop in puzzlement, discussing spiritedly. However, at that time, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't care about what these cultivators were talking about. She immediately rushed over. All the disciples of Limitless Palace have been awakened by me? Nangong Wu raised her eyebrows in excitement. If that's the case, then this power is pretty good. Haha. Yu Linfeng grabbed Nangong Wu. Even though he couldn't see Nangong Wu's face clearly, he knew that Nangong Wu hadn't had a good rest for so many days. She must be exhausted. All right. Now that you've made the explosives to your heart's content, you can finally go back and have a good rest. I'll have to inform the elders later. Many of the disciples think that Yochi's sect has come to attack. Yu Linfeng's elegant face was filled with helplessness and indulgence. He really didn't know what to do with Nangong Wu. Hong Zhuang, I have something to tell you. Nangong Wu, on the other hand, was unable to contain her excitement. It's all thanks to your discovery that day that I was able to create such a powerful explosive. Nangong Wu pulled Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. She was really grateful to Bailey Hongzhuang for allowing her to have a better understanding of explosives. However, without waiting for Nangong Wu to finish speaking, Yu Linfeng had already knocked Nangong Wu unconscious. When Nangong Wu collapsed, Yu Linfeng immediately carried Nangong Wu up. Your master's wife is too tired these days. Let her sleep for a while. After she wakes up, you two can have a good chat. He and Nangong Wu had been together for such a long time. He understood Nangong Wu's temperament very well. If she were to continue like this, it wouldn't take long for her to fall into a coma. The damage to her body would be extremely great. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Let's let Master's wife have a good rest. Chapter 1997. Bailey Hongzhuang followed her back to her bedroom. She felt that Nangong Wu was indeed a genius in the field of explosives. She had only given Nangong Wu a direction, but Nangong Wu was able to create such powerful explosives so quickly. It was really amazing. Xiao Hei, Xiao Bai sure. Do you think that Mistress's explosives are powerful enough? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the three beasts in front of her and asked. It should be enough. At most, we can throw a few more. This has even shocked Limitless Palace. If we throw a few more, the Yu clan would definitely be shocked. Xiao Hei said after thinking. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I also feel that the explosives are very powerful. It should be enough. Thinking until here, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but feel excited. After waiting for so long, she finally had the chance to rescue her parents. Not only that, she also had some ideas about how to create explosives. The Chaos Ring was really too human-like. After she tried to communicate with the middle-aged uncle, he actually agreed to teach her how to create an extremely powerful explosive. She had not created it yet. However, after she created it, she would throw a few at the Yu clan and collect the interest first. That means that we can go to the Yu clan very soon. Baisher said excitedly. Now that things had come to this, he was really happy for his master. Following Baisher's words, Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai's eyes lit up. They had prepared for so long. Wasn't it all for this? Yes. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. When Mistress wakes up, she will definitely start creating the explosives. Once everything is done, we can set off. After Yu Linfeng sent Nangong Wu back to her bedroom, he told the various palace masters about the cause of the commotion. The power of the explosion just now was not small. The disciples were all in a state of panic, so he had to calm them down first. When the disciples of Limitless Palace found out what had happened, they too came to a realization. After all, They had long heard that the mistress liked to create explosives. The mistress is really powerful. The movement of the explosives is actually so big. This is the first time I've seen such powerful explosives. It's far beyond my knowledge. Since there are no enemies attacking, we can go back and rest in peace. After the disciples sighed, they all returned to their own houses. However, they felt that Nangong Wu was even more powerful. Although the palace master was a genius, the mistress was also not to be trifled with. After Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the palace, she began to learn how to make explosives from the middle-aged uncle. The master's wife's explosives had already been successfully made, so it was time for her to start making explosives. To prepare to create a commotion in the Yu clan. When the time came, Nangong Wu hadn't rested for many days. She was just relying on her excitement to support herself. Now that he had fallen into a deep sleep, he only felt that his entire body was exhausted to the extreme. His tense mind had also completely relaxed. This sleep lasted for 7 days. In these 7 days, Bailey Hongzhuang had also mastered how to create the explosives. However, the materials in the Chaos Ring were all virtual. She could not use them in real life. Chapter 1998. Regarding this, Bailey Hongzhuang was not in a hurry. With Mistress's rich inventory, it should not be difficult to gather these materials. However, what she needed most now was to wait for Mistress to wake up. When Bailey Hongzhuang was cultivating in the Heaven Stairway, she finally heard Nangong Wu's voice. "Hongzhuang, are you there?" Nangong Wu's excited voice was like the sound of nature in Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately stood up and walked out of the Heaven Stairway. As expected, Nangong Wu was standing outside the palace with a smile on her face. Compared to the haggard and miserable appearance 7 days ago, the Nangong Wu today was obviously full of energy and vigor. "Mistress, have you rested well?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked with a smile. Nangong Wu smiled and nodded. "Of course, I didn't think that I would be able to sleep for so long. I think you must have been waiting anxiously, right?" "No." Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and said, "I already know how to make such a powerful explosive. Lin Feng is helping me to prepare the materials. I will start making it in a while. After I have finished making it, you can set off to the Yu clan." Nangong Wu couldn't hide the excitement on her face. Although this matter didn't happen to her, she still regarded Bailey Hongzhuang as her own disciple. Being able to help her disciple solve such a huge problem was naturally something she was happy to see. "Then I will have to trouble Mistress." Bailey Hongzhuang did not decline. For the current situation, this was indeed very important. Nangong Wu waved her hand. "What's so difficult about this?" "Mistress, I still have one more thing to ask for your help," Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said. Hearing this, Nangong Wu raised her eyebrows and patted her chest. "Say it. No matter what it is, as long as I can do it, I will definitely help you. I also want to make explosives. I hope that Mistress can provide some materials." Right now, she really did not have any materials at all. Even the cleverest housewife could not cook a meal without rice. This kind of small matter, no problem. Nangong Wu thought it was something important, so it was just this. "Then come with me to the explosives workshop. We will make the explosives together in a while. I can't watch you today. You must be careful when you make the explosives." From Nangong Wu's point, Bailey Hongzhuang's hands was itching to make the explosives after the first time. This was very normal. Many beginners would have this kind of thoughts. "Thank you, Mistress." And Hongzhuang and Nangong Wu immediately walked towards the direction of the explosives workshop. And when Bailey Hongzhuang came to the explosives workshop again, her eyes were filled with a touch of emotion. A few days ago, Mistress had just razed this place to the ground, and now a brand new explosives workshop had appeared again. Not only that, the things inside were still complete. Master's actions were really fast. Coincidentally, I felt that the previous explosives workshop was a bit small. After razing it to the ground and building it again, it was much bigger. After all, I will not be here alone in the future. You will definitely come here sometimes. It is most suitable to be as spacious as it is now. Nangong Wu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a face full of smiles. "Look over there. It will be the place where you make the explosives in the future." Bailey Hongzhuang looked carefully and realized that the explosives workshop had been divided into two parts, which were exactly the same. Chapter 1999. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but feel touched. She didn't think that her master and master's wife would actually prepare so well for her. Previously, when you were making explosives for the first time, I had already told Lin Feng about this idea. Nangong Wu's face was full of smiles. Your talent in explosives is so high. In the future, your attainments in this area will definitely surpass mine. If there isn't a place that specializes in making explosives, it would be too inconvenient. Moreover, this place is very close to the place where the explosives are tested, so it couldn't be more convenient. Furthermore, in the future, we could discuss how to make explosives together. This is simply something that I have always dreamt of. I'm really too happy. Nangong Wu's face was filled with excitement. In the past, there was no one to accompany her. Now, she had finally achieved her goal. Master's wife, thank you. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with gratitude and sincerity. You and Master are really good to me. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but rejoice. If she didn't participate in the examination competition, then she wouldn't have been able to become Yu Linfeng's disciple. She also wouldn't have met Nangong Wu. Naturally, she wouldn't have everything that she had now. Master and Master's wife were so concerned about her, thinking about her in every way. First, they specially made a bedroom for her. Now, they even prepared an explosives workshop for her. When Nangong Wu saw Bailey Hongzhuang's moved expression, her heart also softened. Lin Feng and I don't have any relatives in this world. You're just like our daughter. With your arrival, we also feel very happy. Let's make the explosives first. The most important thing now is to complete the explosives. Then, we could go to the Yu clan. Nangong Wu was obviously not used to this kind of emotional scene. Thus, after saying a few words, she changed the topic. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally understood Nangong Wu's character. She immediately smiled and nodded, saying, "All right." As soon as she got close to the explosives workshop, Nangong Wu's face immediately turned serious. After telling Bailey Hongzhuang to be more careful when making the explosives, she began to make the explosives herself. The last time, not long after she successfully made the explosives, she had fainted. However, she still remembered the process of making the explosives clearly. Now, she needed to make a few sets of explosives, but at that time, everything here had been blown to smithereens, so she needed time to think about it. Seeing that Nangong Wu let her make her own explosives, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't ask for more. She was originally worried that Nangong Wu would watch her make it. This set of explosives was her gift to the Yu clan. This time, when she went to the Yu clan, she wanted to give them a gift first. T leave S uses U T SDT cause S cause T TTS. The Yu clan must have approved of Yu Siqing's plan. If the Yu clan didn't help, Yu Siqing and Yu Manlon wouldn't have been able to do this. This was the plan of the entire Yu clan. Aristocratic families had always been unscrupulous in order to achieve their goals. Chapter 2000. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang's target was not only Yu Siqing and Yu Manlon, but also the entire Yu clan. However, the future was long, and she had plenty of opportunities. She believed that this day would not be too far away. The Yu clan would definitely suffer the consequences of their own actions. At least, from the day she transmigrated into Bailey Hongzhuang, the Yu clan was already destined to suffer the consequences. For a time, Bailey Hongzhuang and Nangong Wu were both diligently making the explosives. Bailey Hongzhuang had already tried to make this kind of explosive many times when she was in the Chaos Ring. Because this kind of explosive was not ordinary, the difficulty of making it was much higher. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was still full of confidence. The three beasts quietly stayed at the side. This kind of environment was not to be disturbed. Bailey Hongzhuang and Nangong Wu put all their thoughts on making the explosives. At this time passed by abnormally fast. After a period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang finally stopped. Her elegant and charming face was surrounded by a confident and dazzling radiance, and her pair of shining eyes were filled with a sharp light. She had already successfully made the explosives. She was looking forward to the effect it would cause in the Yu clan. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang had finished making the explosives, the three beasts looked at each other, and a hint of excitement appeared in their eyes. They would be able to take action very soon. Thinking about it, this was really something to look forward to. After Bailey Hongzhuang finished, she saw that Nangong Wu was still immersed in making the explosives. She quietly stood at the side and watched Nangong Wu make the explosives without disturbing her. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw the process and steps of Nangong Wu making the explosives, her eyes could not help but be filled with a hint of amazement. She had also seen the middle-aged uncle make explosives in the Chaos Ring, but the level of the explosives was also not low, so she had never made one before. She didn't expect that Nangong Wu would be able to do this after she told Nangong Wu some problems a few days ago. It could be seen that Nangong Wu was very good at this. Bailey Hongzhuang secretly decided that once she learned more useful knowledge about explosives, she would definitely tell Nangong Wu. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was quietly waiting for Nangong Wu to finish, suddenly, there was a sound of footsteps outside the door. Hearing the footsteps, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but raise her eyebrows and walk out of the room. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw the three people standing outside the Scissors house, her eyes couldn't help but emit a warm light. These three people were Yulin Feng, Di Beichun, and Situ Yin. "Grandfather, why are you here?" Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Situ Yin in astonishment. She didn't expect her grandfather to personally come to Limitless Palace. It was really out of her expectations. When Situ Yin saw Bailey Hongzhuang, his face revealed a smile. "Since such a big thing happened, I naturally have to come." Ever since Situ Yin found out about this news, he kept thinking about how to save them. There was no doubt that he would be able to save Mu Ling Bing and the other person. If he couldn't think of a way, Situ Yin didn't mind directly killing them. Even if there might be some consequences, Situ Yin couldn't care less. It was obviously too late to make a detailed plan, but since they already knew where Mu Ling Bing and the other person were, they couldn't let this matter continue to develop. Chapter 2001. Listening to Situ Yin's words, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. She had always known that her grandfather was very worried about her parents' situation. It was precisely because of this that Di Beichun had already gone back to inform her grandfather the moment they heard the news. When Yulin Feng heard Bailey Hongzhuang addressing Situ Yin as grandfather, he sighed in his heart. He had never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and Situ Yin would have such a relationship. When Hongzhuang told them the news previously, they were already very shocked. At this moment, after seeing Hongzhuang and Situ Yin with their own eyes, he was even more amazed in his heart. Perhaps all of this was destined by the heavens. Originally, he was still worried that Hongzhuang would want to take revenge. She had to deal with the Lan family and the Yu family at the same time. This was not an easy task. However, now that Tiangang sect had joined the alliance, this matter had become much simpler. Even if it was Situ Yin, he could not just watch his daughter and son-in-law being bullied like this and not care about it. Just from the fact that Situ Yin came to Limitless Palace after hearing the news, it could be seen how much importance Situ Yin attached to this matter. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichun also revealed a smile on his face. Master's wife has already made a more powerful explosive. It's now in the process of making it. When it's done, we can see how effective it is. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was filled with a bright smile. She believed that her grandfather and Di Beichun would be very happy after hearing the news. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichun and Situ Yin's faces revealed a smile as expected. "We have already heard about this matter from Palace Master Yu on the way here. I didn't expect Palace Master's wife to have such deep attainments in this aspect. It's really amazing," Di Beichun said with a smile. Originally, he was still worried that if he could not make the explosive successfully, then this trip would be full of difficulties. However, he didn't expect that the palace mistress would be able to successfully make the explosives in such a short period of time after he left Limitless Palace. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "Ma Am's talent in this area is far beyond ordinary people. Palace Master Yu, it's all thanks to you and your wife." Situ Yin turned around and saw Yulin Feng. His words were filled with gratitude. With regards to Jade Forest Mountain, Situ Yin was similarly filled with emotions. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had already told him about Yulin Feng. He had never thought that Yulin Feng was also a member of the Lan family. In the past, he didn't feel much about the Lan family because they didn't have much contact with each other. However, now that he knew everything, he really felt that the Lan clan was extremely stupid. If Yulin Feng was still a member of the Lan clan, then the Lan clan's strength would definitely be much stronger than it was now. Many people were guessing Yulin Feng's true identity because Yulin Feng seemed to have appeared out of thin air. No one knew which force he came from. If others knew that Yulin Feng only had his current achievements after being forced to leave the Lan clan, they would definitely be shocked. Hearing Situ Yan's words, Yulin Feng's elegant face was filled with a faint smile. Sect Master Situ, you're too polite. Chapter 2002. Hearing Yulin Feng's words, the smile on Situ Yan's face widened. It's Hong Zhuang's blessing that Palace Master Yu is willing to accept Hong Zhuang as her disciple. Saying that, Situ Yan and Yulin Feng looked at each other and smiled. They were extremely satisfied with Hong Zhuang. At this time, there was no need to say anything else. Then let's wait here for a while. After Wu is done making the explosives, we'll see how powerful they are. Hearing Yulin Feng's words, Situ Yan and the others nodded. They were already very glad to be able to hear the good news as soon as they arrived at Limitless Palace. He believed that since Palace Master Yu said so, there should be no problem with the power of the explosives. Originally, they were still worried about what to do if the explosives were not successfully made. Now, it seemed that all of their problems could be solved. At this moment, Di Beichun and Situ Yan's hearts relaxed a little. Since things had developed to this point, they would be able to take action very soon. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were talking, Nangong Wu had already finished making the explosives. Although Nangong Wu was making the explosives in the explosives workshop, she had heard the conversation outside. Therefore, at this moment, she walked out as soon as she finished making the explosives. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others immediately focused their gaze on Nangong Wu. Nangong Wu's face also revealed a smile. Sect Master Situ, Nangong Wu said. Hearing that, Situ Yan smiled faintly. Palace Master's wife, I've troubled you with this matter. We're all family. Why are you being so polite? Nangong Wu obviously did not care about the formalities as she spoke so familiarly. Looking at Nangong Wu's friendliness, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others revealed a smile on their faces. After spending so much time with Nangong Wu, they already understood Nangong Wu's character. Situ Yin did not find it strange as well. After all, Nangong Wu's character was well known in the world of sections. However, from Situ Yan's point of view, Nangong Wu's character was also genuine. Compared to some hypocrites, Nangong Wu's character was undoubtedly more admirable. I've already made the explosives. Why don't we go to the back and see the effects of the explosives? Nangong Wu's face was filled with excitement. Usually, when she was researching explosives, others would think that she was not doing her job properly. She did not expect that the explosives would have such an effect. She was really happy. When she thought that everyone would want to see the results of her work, she felt a sense of pride. After all, people's hard work should work hard. Following Nangong Wu's words, Situ Yin and the others looked at each other and revealed an interested expression. In fact, to cultivators in the world of cultivation, they always felt that the power of the explosives could not reach a certain level. However, since Palace Master Yu and Nangong Wu were so confident, Situ Yin also wanted to see the power of the explosives. Di Beichun was also curious. The last time he left, he did not gain anything from Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Now that they were so happy, they must have gained a lot. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others arrived at the location where they were testing the power of the explosives. Nangong Wu immediately ignited the explosives and threw them into the formation. Chapter 2003. Everyone's eyes fell on the explosive. They were really curious about the power of this explosive. Bang! A loud explosion rang out. Smoke and dust filled the sky, and the whole ground shook from the explosion. The yellow sand in front of them blocked their line of sight. However, with the protection of the array, the power did not spread out. because Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were very close to the location of the array, they could still clearly feel all of this. When Si-Tu Yin and Di Beichen noticed the movement, their eyes could not help but be filled with amazement. They did not expect the power of this explosive to be so powerful. It was far beyond their imagination. If a few of such powerful explosives were thrown in the Yu clan, the Yu clan would definitely be in a panic. After seeing the power of this explosive, Nangong Wu could not help but smile. Her clear eyes were filled with pride. This was her proudest explosive ever since she started developing explosives. This level of power was much stronger than the one she had made in the past. Usually, Yu Linfeng was non-committal when it came to her making explosives. Although he had specially made an explosives workshop for her, from Yu Linfeng's attitude, it could be seen that he did not want her to waste too much time in this area. However, after she made such a powerful explosive last time, Yu Linfeng's attitude changed. This was what made her the happiest. Palace Mistress is really amazing. You can actually make such an explosive. This old man has never seen it before. Si-Tu Yin praised without hesitation. This kind of power was really eye-opening. Di Beichen's eyes were also filled with joy. With this explosive, their problem would be solved. The power of this kind of explosive is really eye-opening. Di Beichen also exclaimed in admiration. Listening to everyone's praise, the smile on Nangong Wu's face became more and more brilliant. She had never heard anyone praise her in the field of explosives. Today, she was really happy. As long as I can help Hongzhuang, I'm the happiest, Nangong Wu said with a smile. Thank you for everything you've done for me. Bailey Hongzhuang bowed to Nangong Wu, her eyes full of sincerity and gratitude. In a short period of time, Si-Tu Yin and Yu Linfeng quickly became familiar with each other. This was because they all had the same person they wanted to treat well. This person was Bailey Hongzhuang. Just this little bit of connection was enough. During lunch, Si-Tu Yin and the others had been discussing how to carry out the rescue plan. In the end, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen decided to let them meet up with the people from Shitian Pavilion. Although Si-Tu Yin was powerful, his whereabouts had always been noticed by many people. Therefore, they decided to have Si-Tu Yin wait at a place not far from them. If there was a problem, it would not be too late for Si-Tu Yin to take action. If there were no problems, they would be able to solve everything on their own. Nangong Wu and Yu Linfeng originally planned to go, but in the end, Si-Tu Yin dissuaded them. The Yu clan was a very sensitive clan. If many people suddenly rushed into the city, they would definitely notice. Therefore, the fewer people they sent, the better. Chapter 2004. The next day, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen left the Limitless Palace and headed toward the Yu clan. The Yu clan was very far from the Limitless Palace. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen spent a lot of time on the journey. Whether it was Bailey Hongzhuang or Di Beichen, both of them wanted to reach the Yu clan as soon as possible. They only wanted to save Lan Yinxiao and Mu Lingbing as soon as possible. The closer they got to Yutian City, the more excited Bailey Hongzhuang became. Until now, she still didn't know what her parents looked like. Back then, they had been separated for more than 10 years. From Bailey Hongzhuang's point of view, Lan Yinxiao and Mu Lingbing had done so much for her. She only hoped that she would be able to repay them in the future. Half a month later, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at the 3 big words written on the city gate in front of them. Their eyes were filled with a complicated light. Yutian City, this was a city within the Yu clan's territory. There were many people with the surname Yu in it. These people were usually from the Yu clan side branches. After a long time, this city was formed. Therefore, whenever outsiders came here, they would always attract a lot of attention. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others weren't stupid people. The Shitian Pavilion had been gathering information for many years, so they were very experienced in dealing with this kind of matter. Long ago, they had come to Yutian City under the pretext of seeking treatment from the Yu clan. With the Shitian Pavilion's ability, they could naturally find people with strange illnesses. After the Yu clan saw the person with the illness, they quoted an extremely high price. It was no different from a lion opening its mouth. The Shitian Pavilion's people pretended that they couldn't take out enough money, so they had been waiting in Yutian City. As for Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, they were the family members who came to give the money. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had disguised themselves as ordinary people. In order to not be discovered, Di Beichun even deliberately hid his aura. He no longer had the intimidating aura from before. This time, their success or failure in coming to Tian City depended on this. Therefore, they had to make sure that no one noticed them. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the city in front of her with a complicated and cold gaze. It was only a fleeting moment. No one noticed it. At that time, her parents had also carried her here to seek help from the Yu clan. In the end, they were chased by the Yu clan. In the end, he panicked and left her in Fongbo country. Then, she was taken away. Therefore, to her, this city was her enemy's city. A city, Tian City, yes, and silently. He was silently, comforted her. Silently. He knew how much Bailey Hongzhuang hated the Yu clan, but now was not the time to make a move. Feeling Di Beichun's comfort, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, her expression returning to normal. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun walked into the city together. Mo Yunjue had already told them the location of the inn. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun found it after searching for a while. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun walked into the inn, many gazes fell on them. However, these gazes were extremely obscure. If it wasn't for Bailey Hongzhuang's amazing intuition, ordinary people wouldn't be able to sense it. Chapter 2005. As Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun knocked on the door, there was a moment of silence in the room. Di Beichun then said, "Young master, we have already brought the money." As Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's voices fell, there was a sound of footsteps in the room. Then, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that the gazes on her had quietly disappeared. Obviously, these were the gazes of the people of Shutian Tower. Just from the performance of these people, Bailey Hongzhuang could see the seriousness and power of Shutian Tower. When the door opened, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun saw a completely unfamiliar face. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun did not find it strange. The two of them also came in disguise. If Mo Yunjue appeared here, then he must also be in disguise. Almost at the moment when they met, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had already determined that the ordinary man in front of them was Mo Yunjue. When Mo Yunjue saw Bailey Hongzhuang, there was a hint of surprise in his eyes, and then he smiled. "Come in." After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun walked into the room, the three of them looked at each other and smiled. "I didn't expect your disguise to be so good. If I didn't know the situation, ordinary people wouldn't recognize you at all." Mo Yunjue had been in Jianghu for many years and had seen many things. Disguise was an important means of Shutian Tower. Among many forces, Shutian Tower's disguise could be said to be the best. However, when he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun in front of him, he felt that their disguising skills were even better than his. How could he not be surprised? Hearing Mo Yunjue's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun smiled. Hongzhuang's disguise skills have always been outstanding. Di Beichun smiled faintly. In the past, he and Mo Yunjue did not have much contact. Speaking of which, they were love rivals. From a few times he had seen Mo Yunjue, he could tell that Mo Yunjue was someone who would not pass on his responsibilities. Since he was able to become the pavilion master of the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion, he was naturally decisive in killing. This time, Mo Yunjue had helped him and Hongzhuang so much. He was really grateful to Mo Yunjue. Hearing this, Mo Yunjue's eyes could not help but fall on Bailey Hongzhuang. "Your disguise looks very natural and very obedient. It is more difficult to detect than the disguise that everyone uses." Mo Yunjue originally had a certain understanding of disguise, so at this moment he already knew the difference between the two with a simple look. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. "If there's a chance, I will teach you this disguise." Mo Yunjue had spent so much effort to help her find her parents this time. Her heart was full of gratitude. Whether it was words or material things, they could not express her gratitude. If the disguise could be of some help to Mo Yunjue, she would not be stingy. As an assassin organization, The Heaven Slaughter Pavilion usually had a lot of shady situations. At this time, if she could master a good disguise, it would be of great help to them. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Mo Yunjue's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he said with a smile, "Then I will thank you in advance. You are too polite. I haven't thanked you for helping me find the whereabouts of my parents." Chapter 2006. Mo Yunjue waved his hand and looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang. Although Bailey Hongzhuang had disguised herself as an ordinary person, her ink-black phoenix eyes were still shining brightly. It had been some time since the end of the competition. Although he knew that he had no hope, he still couldn't stop himself from thinking about Bailey Hongzhuang. After finding out that Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were Bailey Hongzhuang's parents, he personally came to investigate. In order to obtain this accurate information, their Shitian Tower had paid a considerable price. I've said before that as long as it's something you need, I'll definitely help. There's no need to be polite, Mo Yunjue said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her head in astonishment, only to see the deep affection and determination in Mo Yunjue's eyes. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't know what to say. During the competition, she had already explained it to Mo Yunjue. However, she also knew that it wasn't easy to forget someone. Originally, she had hoped that Mo Yunjue would have a good life in the future. She shouldn't have bothered Mo Yunjue. However, there was nothing she could do about the situation this time. Di Baichen naturally didn't miss Mo Yunjue's expression and sighed in his heart. However, he had always stood by Bailey Hongzhuang's side and used his actions to declare his sovereignty. A long time ago, he had already heard that the Shitian Tower's young tower master was decisive and resolute. He was a powerful person. Now that he had come into contact with Mo Yunjue, he increasingly felt that Mo Yunjue wasn't a simple person. This kind of person was truly a formidable opponent. Fortunately, he had met Hongzhuang earlier than Mo Yunjue. Otherwise, this competition wouldn't have been easy. Mo Yunjue naturally knew his limits and immediately said, "Since you're already here, let's talk about the current situation and how to deal with it." Following Mo Yunjue's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen's faces were filled with seriousness. "We've already confirmed that your parents are imprisoned under Yu Siqing's residence." Mo Yunjue's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang, a complicated light flickering in the depths of his eyes. "However, according to our understanding, Yu Siqing is a very ruthless person. Moreover, her medical skills are very brilliant. I think that Uncle and Annie haven't had a good time after being imprisoned by Yu Siqing." Mo Yunjue had never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's identity would be like this. So much so, he couldn't bear to tell Bailey Hongzhuang. If Hongzhuang heard this news, she would definitely be very sad. Bailey Hongzhuang also noticed Mo Yunjue's unbearable gaze. She couldn't help but frown and ask, "What do you mean by not having a good time?" She had already expected that her parents wouldn't have had a good time after all these years. With Yu Siqing's abnormal level, she would probably torture her parents whenever she thought of what happened back then. However, judging from Mo Yunjue's attitude, it seemed that the situation was worse than she had imagined. Yu Siqing's medical skills are very exquisite. Moreover, I've never seen her test the effects of her medicine on humans or animals. Chapter 2007. Mo Yunjue pondered for a moment before deciding to tell Bailey Hongzhuang about this. If Bailey Hongzhuang didn't understand all this now, then when they went in to save people, Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely be shocked by the scene. Under such circumstances, it was a race against time. There was no time to be shocked or delayed. Following Mo Yunjue's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression turned ugly. She had also thought of this situation, but she had been anticipating it. She had been overthinking it. Unfortunately, since Mo Yunjue had said so, then this matter was set in stone. To be used as a lab rat for experiments, this was an extremely miserable treatment. As a doctor, Bailey Hongzhuang understood this situation better than anyone else. She would never use humans as test subjects. At most, she would try it on some animals. If Yu Siqing had used her parents as test subjects all these years, then the pain they had suffered must be even more terrifying than she had imagined. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but clench her hands into fists. Her veins bulged and her eyes filled with anger. She would definitely return all of this to Yu Siqing. Even if she made a move against the Yu family, she wouldn't immediately kill Yu Siqing. She would bring her back and let her experience the torture her parents had suffered all these years. Mo Yunjue looked at the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, and his eyes could not help but be filled with worry. Hongzhuang. Under such circumstances, he knew very well that no matter what kind of words he used to comfort her, they would all pale in comparison. Di Beichen also held Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder. Actually, they all knew that Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao hadn't had a good time these years. They were probably at their last breaths under Yu Siqing's torture. However, when the truth was presented before them, they found it hard to accept. Noticing Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue's worried gazes, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly recovered from her emotions. She waved her hand, and her expression returned to normal, but her eyes were still fierce. "Don't worry, I'm fine," Bailey Hongzhuang said. Although Bailey Hongzhuang said so, Mo Yunjue and Di Beichen's worries didn't dissipate. Right now, Hongzhuang was probably just pretending to be calm. No one could accept this. In reality, they still couldn't imagine what it would be like when they saw Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing. At the same time, they hated Yu Siqing to the extreme. That woman was simply a pervert. If it wasn't for her, Hongzhuang wouldn't have endured all these years of suffering. For the two men, Bailey Hongzhuang was the most important woman in their hearts. Since Yu Siqing dared to hurt Bailey Hongzhuang, they wouldn't let her off from the bottom of their hearts. "Continue. What's the situation now?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked. No matter how serious her parents' injuries were, she would do her best to treat them after she rescued them. Yu Siqing usually stays in her residence and has no intention of leaving. Chapter 2008. Furthermore, she only left to get some medicinal ingredients. It's only been a short while, so it won't be easy for us to save them. At the very least, we have to think of a way to make Yu Siqing leave. Yu Siqing has a very high position in the Yu clan. As long as she gives the order, the entire Yu clan will move. No matter if it's the Yu clan or Yu Tian City, it won't be easy for us to escape once we're discovered. After all, even with Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's strength, they couldn't escape the Yu clan's pursuit. Mo Yunjue's gaze was serious. The Yu clan's strength was indeed not to be underestimated. Furthermore, this was the Yu clan's territory, so it would be even harder for them to move. They didn't have many people with them to fight head-on. Hearing Mo Yunjue's words, the actual situation was the same as what Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had predicted. "We also have some understanding of this situation," Di Beichen slowly said. "We've already thought of a way to deal with this." Hearing this, Mo Yunjue raised his eyebrows and looked at Di Beichen in astonishment. He didn't expect that Di Beichen and the rest had already thought of a way. "We're preparing to throw a few explosives at the Yu clan to attract Yu Siqing's attention. As long as she leaves, we'll take the opportunity to sneak in and quickly rescue them. After that, we'll leave Yu Tian City without hesitation." Explosives? Mo Yunjue frowned. In his opinion, finding a way to attract Yu Siqing's attention was also the best way. However, what method was this? He had thought for a long time, but he couldn't think of a suitable method. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible to attract Yu Siqing's attention. Moreover, the explosives weren't very powerful. Logically speaking, Yu Siqing wouldn't care about such a small matter. "We made extremely powerful explosives, so we don't have to worry about this," Di Beichen explained concisely. Mo Yunjue was also a smart person. Since Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were so confident, then there should be no problem with the explosives. Since you were so confident in the power of the explosives, then this method is indeed feasible, Mo Yunjue said with certainty. "After this, I'll take the money and go to the Yu clan to seek treatment. If possible, we'll ask Yu Siqing for help. While we're there, you can also use explosives. Be prepared. In this way, the Yu clan will be busy everywhere, and Yu Siqing will definitely choose to leave the house." Mo Yunjue thought for a moment and quickly came up with a rescue plan. "Di Beichen, go," and rescue Hong Zhuang's parents. If you need any help, my men can help you. If you need to bring a few people, you can also choose from my subordinates. They're all trustworthy people. Bailey Hong Zhuang shook her head slightly. As for the rescue, Di Beichun and I will do it. Mo Yunjua looked at Bailey Hong Zhuang worriedly. I know that you want to rescue them personally, but the process is full of danger. If Di Beichun goes, he will have more confidence. Mo Yunjua's expression was serious. This wasn't the time to act on impulse. If he was careless, he would lose everything. Di Beichun was very strong. Even if he was discovered, the chances of him escaping would be much higher. Chapter 2009. However, if Bailey Hong Zhuang were to fall into the Yu clan's hands, the situation would not be so simple. Yu Siqing hated Bailey Hong Zhuang and her family so much. If she saw Bailey Hong Zhuang, she would definitely recognize her. At that time, Hong Zhuang would be in danger. With Di Beichun's status, the Yu clan would think carefully about how to deal with him. However, as long as they did not attack Di Beichun, it would not matter if they attacked Bailey Hong Zhuang. Hearing Mo Yunjue's words, Bailey Hong Zhuang knew that Mo Yunjue was worried about her and understood the meaning behind Mo Yunjue's words. However, Bailey Hong Zhuang still smiled and shook her head. I've already made up my mind. Furthermore, I am confident that I will be able to come out safely. If she did not have the Chaos Ring, it would be dangerous for her to rescue them. However, the situation was not that bad now. This time, she had already made sufficient preparations for coming to Yutian City. She believed that she would definitely be able to rescue her parents. Looking at Bailey Hong Zhuang's determined expression, Mo Yunjue frowned slightly. He had been in Yutian City for so long and had a better understanding of the Yu clan. The Yu clan was really a dangerous existence. Although he could feel that Hong Zhuang's strength had increased by quite a bit compared to the time when she came out from the assessment, this level of strength was still not enough for the Yu clan. There were many experts in the Yu clan. Although they had created chaos, the Yu clan's reaction speed was still extremely fast. Thinking about this, Mo Yunjue could not help but look at Di Beichun. In this situation, it was not suitable for him to say too much. He believed that Di Beichun would not agree to it either. However, Di Beichun's answer surprised Mo Yunjue. Since Hong Zhuang has already decided, then let's go together. I will take good care of her. Di Beichun took a deep look at Bailey Hong Zhuang. Hong Zhuang had already told him how to save her. He felt that the chances of success were very high. If there really was danger, Hong Zhuang could enter the Chaos Ring with Uncle and Annie, and he could bring them away. As Di Beichun's words fell, Mo Yunjue's frown deepened. He looked at Di Beichun with dissatisfaction. You're actually going along with Hong Zhuang's nonsense? We've already discussed the countermeasures before, so don't worry. Di Beichun smiled. Mo Yunjue's gaze swept between Di Beichun and Bailey Hong Zhuang. Although he had some doubts in his heart, he could feel Di Beichun's confidence when he said this. Although they were rivals in love, Mo Yunjue also admitted that Di Beichun was very strong. Di Beichun's concern for Hong Zhuang was no less than his. If Di Beichun did not have the confidence to let Hong Zhuang leave safely, he would not have said such words. After thinking for a moment, Mo Yunjue said, Since you have already planned this, then I won't say more. Be careful. Hearing this, Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Beichun nodded. We will. Then, when do you plan to take action? Mo Yunjue asked. Di Beichun and Bailey Hong Zhuang looked at each other and said, The sooner the better. As long as you have made sufficient preparations, we can take action at any time. Mo Yunjue spoke without hesitation. No matter what he did, he was always swift and decisive. Moreover, in such a situation, Hong Zhuang's parents would have to suffer more if they were to delay any further. Chapter 2010. On the way to Yutian City, Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Beichun had been discussing how to rescue them. Until now, they had already come up with a plan to rescue them. Mo Yunjue wasn't surprised when he heard Bailey Hong Zhuang's reply. He believed that Hong Zhuang must have been very anxious when she was waiting for them these few days. She definitely didn't want to waste any time. All right, but we still need to discuss it. After you rescue them, you also need to understand the escape route. Hearing Mo Yunjue's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. Originally, she was worried that Mo Yunjue would think that she was too anxious. She didn't expect that Mo Yunjue wasn't surprised at all. This made her sigh in relief. Following that, Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, and Mo Yunjue started to talk about the details in detail. They had to think everything through before they could take action. At least, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen still didn't know about the Yu clan's environment and characteristics. Without knowing where Yu Siqing's residence was, everything was meaningless. Mo Yunjue was obviously very experienced. He had already prepared everything on the map. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen memorized everything on the map. Later, I will bring people to the Yu clan and ask them to find Yu Siqing for treatment. It would be best if she could leave. If she doesn't want to leave, then you guys can only interfere. Mo Yunjue said slowly. Understood. Di Beichen nodded. After Hongzhuang and I take action, no matter what the result is, it has nothing to do with you guys. You just have to continue acting. After we rescue father and mother, we will leave immediately. Don't worry. Bailey Hongzhuang said. It's too eye-catching for the two of you to leave with two injured people. I'll let my subordinates help you. Mo Yunjue waved his hand and said slowly. This time, he had come to Yutian City in the name of asking for help, so he had to continue acting. However, he was not afraid of danger. If Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had to bear all the risks, he couldn't just ignore them. Hearing Mo Yunjue's words, Bailey Hongzhuang was touched. From the beginning until now, Mo Yunjue had helped her too much. Just this time, Mo Yunjue had helped her find out the location of her parents, and she was already very grateful. She didn't know how to repay his kindness. Needless to say, she knew that Mo Yunjue had paid a huge price to find out where her parents were. Thinking back, Di Beichen had also paid a huge price to find out where her parents were, but he didn't get any results. Whether it was Di Beichen or Mo Yunjue, they didn't tell her the price they had paid. However, she knew it very well. If there was a day that she could repay Mo Yunjue, she would definitely do her best to do so. No need, we can do it. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, My grandfather is here too. Mo Yunjue, who was originally very worried, understood after hearing the second half of Bailey Hongzhuang's words. The Tiangang sect leader had personally come to Yutian City. No wonder Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were so confident. Chapter 2011. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two discussed how to deal with the situation, they quietly waited for the sky to darken. After all, the sky was too bright. No matter what they did, it would be inconvenient. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen then returned to the house. After Mo Yunjue left, they began to move. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were preparing to rest in the house, suddenly, a cry of surprise came from a street. Lan family's eldest miss is here. So this is Lan family's eldest miss, Lan Qingyan. They had long heard of her name. Seeing her today, she was indeed extraordinary. Lan family's eldest miss is famous for being favored by the heavens. Sometimes, she would come with her mother to the Yu family to take a look. Lan Qingyan. Hearing this name, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes suddenly changed. Regarding this sister, who had stolen everything from her, she had never seen her with her own eyes. Originally, she thought that there was still some time before they would meet. She didn't expect that they would have the opportunity to meet each other today. Bailey Hongzhuang opened the window and saw that the street was crowded with people. Everyone was either curious or envious as they looked at the oncoming carriage. This carriage was covered by a white veil on all sides. It was hazy. Looking carefully, one could still clearly see Lan Qingyan's appearance. Lan Qingyan was wearing a white dress. Her appearance was outstanding. Her eyes were upturned, revealing disdain and contempt towards the gazes of the crowd. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw that Lan Qingyan also liked to wear a white dress, she couldn't help but frown. She didn't think that Lan Qingyan's preferences were so similar to hers. No wonder she had stolen everything from her. It seemed that they were destined to be enemies from the moment they were born. Seeing the disdain and arrogance on Lan Qingyan's face, Bailey Hongzhuang recalled her decade-long life in the general's residence. Originally, all the glory belonged to their family. However, it was destroyed by Lan Qingyin's family. It was obviously stolen, but they took it for granted. Her parents were still suffering in the Yu clan, while Lan Qingyin's family was enjoying the splendor and wealth. A strong hatred burned in Bailey Hongzhuang's chest. Her body seemed to become scorching hot in an instant, and a burning pain spread all over her body. Lan Qingyin's family had caused them to sink into a tragedy for more than 10 years, and she would make Lan Qinyin sink into hell for the next few years. She, Bailey Hongzhuang, was a woman of her words. Lan Qinyin sat loftily on top of the carriage, wearing luxurious clothes. Her every movement was filled with arrogance and contempt. Every time she went out, these people would show such an expression. She was already used to it. These ordinary people were a joke in her eyes. From the moment she was born, she was nobler than these people and received everyone's attention. However, at this moment, Lan Qinyin felt an extremely sharp light. Even she felt a chill in her heart when she felt this gaze. She felt uncomfortable from the bottom of her heart. She couldn't help but look around, but found that this gaze had already disappeared, making her unable to investigate. Lan Qinyin couldn't help but frown. In Yutian City, there was actually someone who dared to look at her with such a gaze. Bailey Hongzhuang understood that her gaze towards Lan Qinyin was filled with murderous intent, so she quickly retracted her gaze. Chapter 2012. Behind Lan Qingyin's carriage was a woman dressed in a peony-colored robe. Although it was Bailey Hongzhuang's first time seeing her, she knew that this was Lan Qingyin's mother, Yu Manlan. She was the instigator of this matter. If it wasn't for Yu Manlan's selfishness, how could they have fallen to such a state? Speaking of which, the instigators of this matter were Yu Siqing and Yu Manlan. These two women from the Yu clan had the hearts of snakes and scorpions. It wouldn't be long before she would tear apart their pretense of elegance and nobility, revealing their true faces in front of everyone. Yu Manlan was originally in a good mood, so she took the time to return to her maternal home to take a look. However, just as she was feeling happy, she suddenly felt a chill down her spine. When she wanted to see where the problem came from, it had already disappeared, as if it had never appeared. Yu Manlan thought for a moment, then shook her head. This was Yutian City. It was impossible for such a situation to occur. She must have been hallucinating. Yu Manlan shook her head and ignored that feeling. With her current noble status, who would dare to harm her? Unless they didn't want to live anymore. After Lan Qinyin and Yu Manlan's carriage disappeared from her sight, Bailey Hongzhuang retracted her gaze. Di Beichen's hand had already quietly rested on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder. He also didn't expect to meet Lan Qinyin and Yu Manlan here today. Hongzhuang saw these two enemies for the first time, so the impact on her heart must be great. Wife, you will soon take back everything that belongs to you. Di Beichen's voice was firm and unquestionable. Things that were taken from others didn't belong to them. The glory that Lan Qinyin and Yu Manlan were enjoying now would eventually be overturned by their hands. His beloved wife was almost ruined by these despicable and shameless people. Even if it was him, he would not allow them to continue living freely like this. I was just thinking, every time father and mother knew that Lan Jingquan's family was living such a glorious life, how much pain did they feel in their hearts? Bailey Hongzhuang gritted her teeth, and every word seemed to be squeezed out from between her teeth. She was almost certain that every time Yu Manlan and the others returned to the Yu clan, Yu Siqing would definitely tell her parents the news. The enemy who had caused him to be in such a miserable state had been living such a carefree life all these years. When father and mother heard this news, their hearts must have been bleeding. The feeling of wanting to destroy everything was spreading, but he couldn't do anything about it. Just the pain of blood and tears was not something that an ordinary person could understand. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Di Beichen's body shook. Bailey Hongzhuang's words gave him a great shock. Just thinking about this kind of pain was unbearable for him, let alone Lan Yinshao and his wife. Wife, all of this suffering will end. Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand tightly. Bailey Hongzhuang's hand was ice-cold without a trace of warmth, just like her pale face that was filled with pain. I'm fine. Bailey Hongzhuang gritted her teeth. She knew that all of this pain was meaningless. She wanted to solve all of this herself and return all of this pain to these dirty and shameless people 1,000 times over. Chapter 2013. In fact, Bailey Hongzhuang was not the only one who was in pain. When Si Tian saw Lan Qingyin and Yumanlan, his eyes were also filled with anger. It was these people who had ruined his daughter and granddaughter's lives. He suppressed the urge to make a move. He really wanted to strangle the two of them to death. However, if he made a move now, Mu Lingbing would not be able to see, and he would not be able to vent his anger. Therefore, he would let the two of them live for a while longer. However, this comfortable life would not last long. Di Beichun poured a cup of tea for Bailey Hongzhuang to let Bailey Hongzhuang regain her composure. They still had to make a move later. Hongzhuang could not afford to lose her composure now. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Di Beichun opened the door and saw Mo Yunjue standing outside. Mo Yunjue did not have time to greet Di Beichun. His gaze was already fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang. He did not expect Lan Qingyin and Yumanlan to come to the Yu clan today. When he saw Lan Qingyin and Yumanlan's carriage, he knew that something was wrong. He was also clear about the enmity between the two of them and Hongzhuang. At this moment, Hongzhuang must have seen them as enemies. However, this was not the time to have a conflict with Lan Qingyin and Yumanlan. He knew that Hongzhuang would definitely suppress the displeasure in her heart. However, the impact of this scene on her would not be small. After all, she came to Yutian City to rescue her parents. However, she met her enemies here. Comparing the two, one could imagine the pain and hatred in her heart. Faced with such a background, even he could not help but feel sorry for Bailey Hongzhuang. Fortunately, when Mo Yunjue saw Bailey Hongzhuang, although Bailey Hongzhuang's face was slightly pale, she did not lose her composure. Di Beichun knew the purpose of Mo Yunjue coming to the house at this moment. He must be worried about Hongzhuang. He immediately stepped aside and allowed Mo Yunjue to enter the room. Mo Yunjue nodded at Di Beichun and slowly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. "Hongzhuang, are you all right?" Mo Yunjue asked. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Mo Yunjue, and the corners of her mouth curled into a smile. However, this smile did not reach her eyes. "I'm fine. I've known about this for a long time. Although today is the first time I've seen them, I'll have many opportunities to meet them in the future. Don't worry about me." Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was cold. This time, there was no conflict between them. However, the next time they met, everything would not be so simple. After Mo Yunjue felt the intense hatred in Bailey Hongzhuang's words, he also understood that no matter who it was, with such a background, when facing their enemies, they would definitely be filled with hatred. Not to mention Bailey Hongzhuang. If it was him, he would definitely make Lan Qingyin's family live a life worse than death. After Hongzhuang, Lan Qingyin and the others arrive, I'm afraid that there will be some changes in the situation. I'll ask my subordinates to find out about their situation after they enter the Yu clan. After that, we'll decide whether to take action tonight. How about it? Mo Yunjue slowly said. If Lan Qingyin and the others did not appear, there would not be any problems taking action tonight. However, since there was a variable, then any changes were possible. They had to be prepared. Chapter 2014. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally knew that this sudden turn of events would affect their following actions, so she nodded. All right. Hearing this, Mo Yunjue walked out of the room and instructed his subordinates to keep an eye on Lan Qingyin and Yu Manlin's movements after they entered the Yu residence. After Mo Yunjue left, Bailey Hongzhuang clenched her fists again, her gaze sinister and ruthless. Di Beichun saw the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, and his deep and charming eyes were filled with concern. "Wife, what's wrong? My parents have been imprisoned by Yu Siqing for so many years. Others may not know, but Yu Manlan and the others must know." Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichun's expression changed slightly. He had also considered this point. Back then, this matter was done by Yu Siqing and Yu Manlan. Lan Jingquang also knew about this. All these years, Lan Jingquang and his family would occasionally come to the Yu residence to show off in front of her parents. Back in the Lan residence, Lan Jingquang had been suppressed by Lan Yunxiao in every aspect, but he had been forced to turn things around. Since Lan Jingquang was able to do such a thing back then, his mentality was naturally extremely twisted. I'm afraid that you Manlan and Lan Xinyin will definitely go to Yu Siqing's basement after going to the Yu residence. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with a cold light. She originally thought that after saving her parents today, her parents' suffering would end here. She never thought that Yu Manlan and Lan Xinyin would suddenly appear. Her parents would probably have to endure another round of humiliation. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang felt an indescribable pain in her heart. Di Beichun was also speechless towards Bailey Hongzhuang's words. In fact, he had the same thought in his mind. Lan Yunxiao and his wife had already suffered enough these years. He never thought that they would have to endure another round of suffering today. None of them thought that there would be a new problem and another unforeseen event while saving them today. Wife, we will definitely rescue Uncle and Annie tonight. Don't worry too much. At a time like this, all words seem to pale in comparison. However, even if the situation had changed due to Lan Xinyan's appearance, they would still rescue them tonight. As for the matter of revenge, they would be ready very soon. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes and fell into silence. Although he was furious, there was nothing he could do about it. She could only wait for Mo Yunjue's men to return and tell her the details of the situation. She only hoped that this matter would not change too much because of the arrival of Lan Xinyin and Yi Qingyu. If their parents had to suffer another round of humiliation, then they would remember this taste and return it 1,000 times in the future. After Lan Xinyin and Yu Manlan arrived at the Yu clan, they were welcomed by the Yu clan. Lan Xinyan's reputation among the younger generation of cultivators was extremely resounding. Her position in the Lan family was also incomparable. Just the Rainbow Divine Pearl special power was not something that ordinary people could compare to. Although Lan Xinyin was a member of the Lan family, she also had half of the Yu clan's bloodline. Therefore, the Yu clan was equally proud of her. Lan Xinyin looked at the Yu clan's welcoming manner and felt a burst of pride in her heart. With her talent and strength, there were not many people in the younger generation who could compare to her. Chapter 2015. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun quietly waited for news in the room. The two of them didn't make any unnecessary movements and just sat quietly at the side. However, the anxiety in their hearts couldn't be concealed. Now, every minute and every second was a kind of torture to them. They could only wait here. After an hour, Mo Yunjue finally appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's line of sight. However, Mo Yunjue's expression was obviously not good. Yu Manlan and Lan Xinyin went to find Yu Siqing not long after arriving at the Yu clan. Mo Yunjue couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. Yu Manlan and Yu Siqing had a very deep relationship. However, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were imprisoned below Yu Siqing. As for whether they were talking to Yu Siqing or had gone to the dungeon, they couldn't tell from outside. However, under such circumstances, the latter was obviously more likely. The teacup in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand instantly turned into powder after hearing Mo Yunjue's words. Although she had already guessed this possibility, when it really happened, she couldn't help but feel even worse. I've already sent people to keep an eye on them and see when they come out of the room. Mo Yunjue spoke. Hongzhuang, you don't have to worry too much. Lan Xinyin and Yu Manlan's appearance didn't cause too much of a change. On the contrary, they might have helped us. Hearing this, Di Beichun couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue and ask, what do you mean? Lan Xinyan's status in the Lan clan is very high. The Yu clan also values Lan Xinyin very much. Therefore, the Yu clan is already preparing a banquet. Tonight, the Yu clan's members will all have a banquet together. In this way, Yu Siqing will definitely leave the room, and it will be more convenient for us to take action. As he spoke, Mo Yunjue observed the changes in Bailey Hongzhuang's expression. In this situation, he was unable to comfort Bailey Hongzhuang. He could only hope that this news would comfort Bailey Hongzhuang a little. Master, are you all right? Xiaohe looked worriedly at Bailey Hongzhuang. Ever since Lan Qingyin and Yu Manlan appeared, Master's mood had not been right. They were really worried. Xiao Bai and Bai Shi also looked worriedly at Bailey Hongzhuang. Although they knew that their master was in a terrible mood, they were still worried about her. Looking at the worried looks of the three beasties, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. It's nothing. I was just thinking about how to give you Xiqing and the rest a surprise. Yu Xiqing, Yu Manlan, Lan Qingyan. These three women were undoubtedly the three women she hated the most. Although her goal today was to save her parents, and she couldn't waste any more time here, she still had to think of a way to return something to them. Otherwise, this would not be in line with her personality. The three beasties, who were originally worried, were relieved after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words. This was their master's true nature. Since things had come to this, they had to get something back. They couldn't let the other party continue to be so arrogant. Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue heaved a sigh of relief after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's expression. At least, they didn't need to be so worried anymore. Chapter 2016. After all, the Yu clan had gone overboard with Hongzhuang. If they didn't collect some interest, they wouldn't be happy about it. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze landed on Mo Yunjue and said, Yunju, do you have a detailed map of the Yu clan? Since she was here, she had to leave something behind. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in line with her character. Although she couldn't deal with the Yu clan now, it wouldn't be a problem for her to do other things. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Mo Yunjue's eyes were filled with doubt. He didn't know what Hongzhuang was planning to do. However, no matter what Hongzhuang chose to do, he would support her. Yes, Mo Yunjue nodded. Previously, when they were searching for the location where Lan Yunxiao and his wife were being held, they had spent a lot of effort. They were very familiar with every place in the Yu clan. Therefore, they naturally had a detailed map of the distribution of the Yu clan. Bailey Hongzhuang took the map from Mo Yunjue's hands, and her eyes immediately brightened. Beichun, you and Yunju go to the next room first. I need to prepare some things. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichun and Mo Yunjue looked at each other and nodded. To them, as long as Hongzhuang's mood could improve, then no matter what Hongzhuang did, it would be good. After Di Beichun and Mo Yunjue left together, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly took out the materials from the primordial chaos ring. The three beasties looked curiously at Bailey Hongzhuang. Every time Master wanted to prank someone, she would use some unexpected method. They didn't know what Master was planning to do this time. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Xiao He and Xiao Bai in front of her and said, I'll have to trouble you today. Upon hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xiao He and Xiao Bai did not feel tired at all. Instead, they looked very excited. Master, what do you want us to do? As long as we can do it, there will be no problem. Xiao He's eyes lit up. It already hated the Yu clan to the core. Now that it had the chance to take revenge on them, it was the happiest thing in the world. White Lion was a little disappointed. At a time like this, he wanted to do something for his master. Bailey Hongzhuang stroked Bai Shi's head. She knew how Bai Shi felt. However, given the situation today, it was not convenient for White Lion to take action. The Yu clan was heavily guarded. White Lion's body was getting bigger and bigger. It was too eye-catching. If they were captured by the Yu clan, that would be really bad. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were different. They could change their sizes at will, and it was almost impossible for them to be discovered. Master, do you want us to bring explosives to the Yu clan's most important place? Xiao Bai looked excitedly at Bailey Hongzhuang. For it, who wanted to see the world in chaos, it was also full of evil ideas. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. This is indeed one of the plans. Hearing this, White Lion asked curiously, There's a second plan? Of course. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with a ruthless light. The Yu clan was the first to be unkind to them. Then, they shouldn't blame her for being unjust. I have to hurry up and make the poison powder. After Bailey Hongzhuang left a sentence, she began to get busy. Chapter 2017. This was not the first time Bailey Hongzhuang had used the poison powder. Back in the Qing dynasty, she had given the Crown Prince Nangong Aochin a pill made from this poison powder. It was precisely because of this poison powder that half of the Qing dynasty's royal family was crippled by her and could not recover in a short period of time. As a medical family, the Yu family had attainments in medicine and poison that others did not have. Therefore, she had to improve the poison powder a little to achieve a certain effect. Bailey Hongzhuang had studied this before, but she felt that it was too vicious, so she did not make it. However, in the face of family like the Yu family, no matter how vicious the method was, it was nothing. Even under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang could still concentrate on making the poison powder. Perhaps, in this situation, she could only do this to calm herself down. The three beasts quietly stayed at the side, watching their master make the poison powder, but in their minds, they were thinking about how they should act at night. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was busy, Yu Siqing's residence was another scene. Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyan followed Yu Siqing into the dungeon. The dark and damp environment made Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyan frown. This kind of environment was really unbearable for them, who lived like princes. After seeing Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyan, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's faces darkened. For them, no matter what kind of torture they suffered in this dungeon, it was not the worst. Every time Lan Jingquang and the others came, they felt an unbearable humiliation. Mu Lingbing's gaze fell on Lan Qingyan. Yixian was not much younger than Lan Qingyan. If Yixian was still alive, she would be about the same age now. Unfortunately, because of these guys in front of her, she would never have the chance to see Yixian again. As a mother, this was the greatest pain in her life. After feeling Mu Lingbing's hateful gaze, Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyan could not help but feel uncomfortable in their hearts. This kind of malicious gaze really made people's hair stand on end. Mu Lingbing, no matter how you look at us, you are destined to be a prisoner in this life, Yu Manlan said coldly. She hated Mu Lingbing's gaze and hated this dark and damp dungeon. Mu Lingbing looked coldly at Yu Manlan. Unrighteous deeds are doomed to destruction. Yu Manlan, I want to see how long you can remain arrogant. She had done such a despicable and filthy thing, yet she was still dressed so beautifully. All of this was snatched by you. No matter how you pretend to be yours, in the end, you're just trying to paint a tiger, but end up looking like a dog. When Mu Lingbing thought about how she used to treat Yu Manlan as her sister-in-law, and how they were on very good terms, she felt a wave of disgust wash over her. Speaking of which, she had too much in the past and was immersed in her own happiness. She had never paid attention to the thoughts of these despicable people. Hearing Mu Lingbing's words, Yu Manlan couldn't help but think of how she had been suppressed by Yu Manlan in the past. To her, it was a humiliating gaze that she didn't want to recall. She was also the daughter of the Yu family, but after marrying into the Lan family, she had been suppressed by Mu Lingbing. Be it in terms of looks, power, or charisma, she couldn't compare to Mu Lingbing. It was as if she was just a supporting character in Mu Lingbing's presence. Everyone's eyes were on Mu Lingbing. Chapter 2018. She was the young miss of the Yu family, while Mu Lingbing was just an orphan. Even if she was an outstanding disciple of the Sun Moon Palace, her status couldn't compare to hers. But under these circumstances, she was still being suppressed by Mu Lingbing. One could only imagine how frustrated she was. So, no matter what, she had to trample Mu Lingbing under her feet. If Bailey Hongzhuang was here, she would definitely feel that Yu Manlan was very similar to Yu Siqing. No wonder they were both in the Yu family. Yu Manlan quickly walked forward and slapped Mu Lingbing hard across the face. Slap! Blood trickled from the corner of Mu Lingbing's mouth, but her eyes were still ruthlessly glaring at Yu Manlan. Mu Lingbing, you're destined to be a prisoner for the rest of your life. You'll never be able to free yourself. Right now, almost everyone has forgotten about your existence. Jingquang, Qingyan, and I have the highest status in the Lan family. Mu Lingbing coldly snorted. You're deceiving yourself. Yu Manlan was even angrier at Mu Lingbing's words. Lan Yunxiao also glared at Yu Manlan. This woman dared to hit Mu Lingbing. His heart was filled with rage. He wanted to break free from these shackles, but there was nothing he could do. Yu Manlan couldn't help but turn to Yu Siqing. Aunt, why don't you just kill them? So much time has passed. There's no point in keeping them alive. Instead, it's displeasing to look at them. Yu Manlan had no interest in torturing Mu Lingbing. She only hoped that Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing would disappear from this world. In this way, there would be no one to remind her of her lowly past. However, she couldn't understand why Yu Siqing and Lan Jingquang insisted on keeping them alive. Lan Qingyan frowned at this scene. She also didn't like coming to this place, but her grandaunt and father were very enthusiastic. Yu Siqing shook her head at Yu Manlan's words. They're still useful. Don't think too much about it. She hadn't let Situ Yin and Mu Jin see Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao suffering with their own eyes. How could she just end their lives like this? Yu Manlan felt helpless. She had already expected this result. Over the years, she had asked many times, but her aunt had always been so insistent. She was helpless. Yu Manlan looked at Mu Lingbing with disgust. You can continue to struggle at death's door here, living a life where you can't see the light of day. I will let you know how glorious our family is. Bailey Hongzhuang was concentrating on making the poison powder. After spending an hour and a half, Bailey Hongzhuang stopped. Bailey Hongzhuang put the poison powder into a small cloth bag. This cloth bag was also sewn by her just now. It was small and easy for Little Black and Little White to carry. Master, are you done? Little Black, who had been silent the whole time, couldn't help but ask after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang stop. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. This poison powder is very powerful. When the time comes, you need to be careful. Xiao He and Xiao Bai nodded. Understood. Chapter 2019. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the three beasts' eyes were filled with excitement. This idea was really bad. However, they liked it. Master, where should we put this poison powder? White Lion asked. We should put it somewhere with a lot of people. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. As a clan, the most important thing is the younger generation. If we put this poison powder in the residence of the younger generation or in the training grounds, I believe it will be enough to trouble them for a while. If we use this poison powder at the banquet, wouldn't the effect be better? Xiao He asked. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand. There will be too many people at the banquet, and the Yu clan will have many experts. It will be too difficult to poison them without anyone noticing. As a medical family, the Yu clan is very familiar with such methods, so we can't do that. Since the Yu clan is holding the banquet tonight, you can go to the residence and scatter the poison powder in the room. You don't need a lot of it. The poison powder is very effective. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled coldly. Even if the Yu clan was a medical family, it would still take a lot of time for them to neutralize her poison powder. Just this short period of time would be enough to cause a lot of trouble for the Yu clan. As for the other part, she would use it together with the explosives. When the explosives exploded, there would be a lot of white smoke and a special smell. In this way, the Yu clan would not notice it at all. In short, she would definitely leave an unforgettable memory for the Yu clan tonight. Master, don't worry. We will definitely complete the task that you have given us perfectly. Xiao He and Xiao Bai patted their chests and said. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the sky. At this moment, it was already late, and they had to start moving. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang opened the door and walked into the room next door. Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue had always been concerned about Bailey Hongzhuang's movements. When they saw Bailey Hongzhuang, their eyes lit up. Wife, Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly, her expression returning to normal. It's getting late. Is there any news? Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyan left after entering Yu Siqing's room for an incense stick's worth of time. Now, the entire Yu clan is preparing for the banquet. If nothing unexpected happened, Yu Siqing would also leave the house. Mo Yunjue said slowly. This was undoubtedly excellent news for them. Then you will be able to sneak into the Yu clan safely. I need to enter through the Yu clan's main gate. Looking at the Yu clan situation tonight, it's obvious that they won't agree to the treatment. However, in order to not arouse their suspicion, I still have to make a trip there. Everything that happened here could not escape the Yu clan's eyes. The Yu clan would definitely know about the people who came. Delaying for a short period of time was nothing, but if he didn't go for a long time, then it would reveal some clues. If possible, Mo Yunjue also wanted to move together with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. However, When he went to the Yu clan to inquire about the news, he went there personally. Therefore, he had to complete this act now. Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun both understood Mo Yunjue's situation and nodded in understanding. Then, we can move now? Bailey Hongzhuang said. That's right. Let's go. Deep Beichun said. Mo Yunjue looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun and said, Be careful. Chapter 2020. Bailey Hongzhuang, Deep Beichun, and Mo Yunjue split into 3 groups and started to move. Although it was Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun's first time in Yutian City, they had already found out the exact location after looking at Mo Yunjue's map. Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun walked toward the Yu clan. At this moment, they had already bought a new set of clothes. Even their appearances had changed a little. Bailey Hongzhuang was confident that no one would be able to recognize their true appearances after changing their appearances. Mo Yunjue was not at ease with Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun moving alone. Hence, he had even sent some of his subordinates to guide Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun. Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun quickly arrived outside the Yu clan's high walls. The Yu clan's walls were extremely high, and the area covered was also very large. Fortunately, under the guidance of Mo Yunjue's subordinates, they had arrived at the place closest to Yu Siqing. Bailey Hongzhuang then looked at Xiao He and Xiao Bai, who were beside her. Have you guys memorized the Yu clan's map? Previously, she had already asked Xiao He and Xiao Bai to memorize the map. After such a long time, she believed that Xiao He and Xiao Bai had already memorized the map. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xiao He and Xiao Bai nodded confidently. Master, don't worry. We have already memorized it. Looking at Xiao He and Xiao Bai's confident looks, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with a smile. Since that's the case, you guys can start moving first. According to their current situation, the younger generation of the Yu clan had already started to rush to the location of the banquet. However, Yu Siqing had not left yet, so now was not the time for them to take action. Mo Yunjue's subordinate had already left after informing Bailey Hongzhuang of the situation. Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun were dressed in black robes, their figures leaping straight into the Yu clan. After entering the Yu clan, Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun took a quick glance and discovered that there was a house not far away. It was Yu Siqing's residence. The two of them immediately retracted their figures and hid in the darkness. They were going to wait here for Yu Siqing to leave before rescuing Lan Yunxiao and Lan Yunxi at lightning speed. According to Bailey Hongzhuang's original plan, they were going to use explosives to lure Yu Siqing away. However, after the banquet, they didn't need to go through so much trouble. They only needed to wait for Yu Siqing to leave before sneaking into her house. Whether it was Bailey Hongzhuang or Deep Beichun, both of them had a certain level of ability in concealing their aura. Although Yu Siqing was very powerful, their methods weren't weak either. Even so, Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun were still somewhat worried. According to the information they had gathered, Yu Siqing was an extremely cautious person. The slightest movement would attract her attention. Therefore, they could only be extremely careful to prevent being discovered by Yu Siqing. However, Bailey Hongzhuang also had her own way of dealing with this. Once Yu Siqing discovered them, she and Deep Beichun would directly enter the Chaos Ring. This way, Yu Siqing wouldn't be able to find them. Overall, they were still full of confidence in today's operation. Chapter 2021. Her parents were shrouded in the darkness of this house. Her enemy was living in this house. Thinking of this, her heart was filled with an indescribable indignation. However, in this situation, she could not reveal any killing intent. She could only suppress all these emotions in her heart. As an expert, she was extremely sensitive to killing intent. No matter when, as long as she revealed a slight killing intent, the other party would be able to sense it. Deep Beichun's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang had concealed all her emotions so perfectly, his eyes were filled with admiration. While Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun were waiting quietly, Xiao He and Xiao Bai had already rushed into the Yu clan at lightning speed. Their bodies had shrunk to the smallest size possible, as small as a rock. Normal people would not notice them at all. Xiao Bai's body was originally black. In this dark night, it would not attract any attention at all. Xiaohei's body was white. However, before it could move, Bailey Hongzhuang had already turned its body black. Therefore, Xiao Bai would not be discovered by others. Xiaohei and Xiao Bai quickly moved around the Yu clan, their eyes constantly looking around. Previously, they had already memorized the map of this place. Therefore, they had a certain understanding of a Yu clan's martial arts field and the disciples' living quarters. Now that they had entered the Yu clan, they headed straight to their destination without wasting any time. They were very clear that their master did not leave them much time. They needed to complete all of this before their master took action and successfully meet up with their master and the others. However, their time was not short either. As long as they met up with their master before she left the Yu clan, everything would be considered success. Xiaohei, you go to the disciples' living quarters. I'll go to the martial arts field. We'll split up and complete all of this as soon as possible. Xiaobai said slowly. The Yu clan's territory was extremely large. Even if their speed wasn't considered slow, they still had to take into account other people's attention, so they had no choice but to slow down. If the two of them moved together, it would take a lot of time. Only by splitting up could they save as much time as possible. This way, they would be able to quickly reunite with their master. Hearing Xiao Bai's words, Xiaohei nodded and said, "No problem." While Xiaohei and Xiao Bai were taking action, Imo Yunjue had already brought the patient to the Yu clan. He wanted to attract even more people during this banquet. Although he knew that he would definitely be rejected by the Yu clan, being able to delay a bit of time was also extremely good for him. After all, time was of the essence to Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Bailey Hongzhuang held her breath as she waited. This Yu Siqing was indeed different from ordinary people. The other members of the Yu clan had already started to head towards the location of the night banquet, but Yu Siqing had stayed in the house without coming out. Thinking up to this point, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but frown. Could it be that Yu Siqing didn't plan to attend the banquet at all? If that was the case, then their plan would have to change a bit. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking about this and her mood was unstable, Yu Siqing, who was in the house, suddenly felt something and quickly rushed out of the house. Chapter 2022. Yu Siqing quickly appeared in the hiding place of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. She scanned her surroundings, but found nothing. Yu Siqing furrowed her brows. She had clearly sensed an unusual aura in this place. Why had it disappeared? She had moved very quickly. If the other party had been standing here, she would have been able to see the direction in which they had left. However, there was clearly nothing. This was too strange. Yu Siqing stood on the wall of the courtyard and scanned her surroundings carefully. There were no signs of anyone leaving. Seeing this scene, even Yu Siqing couldn't help but be confused. Could it be that she had sensed wrongly? After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen entered the chaos ring, their foreheads were drenched in cold sweat. Bailey Hongzhuang gasped for breath, her heart still palpitating with fear. Previously, she had only revealed a little bit of her aura because she had been wondering why Yu Siqing had not left. She did not think that Yu Siqing would be so sharp that she would not miss even the slightest movement. It was a good thing that when she had noticed the change in Yu Siqing's aura, she had immediately hid in the chaos ring with Di Beichen. Otherwise, she and Di Beichen would have been exposed to Yu Siqing's eyes. Yu Siqing is very powerful indeed. Di Beichen's eyes were filled with fear. If they had been a second slower, they would have been caught by Yu Siqing. Once they had been caught by Yu Siqing, the consequences would have been unthinkable. It seems that we'll have to stay in the chaos ring for a while. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly spoke. Since Yu Siqing was so sharp, she must be certain that the two of them had been here before. This meant that Yu Siqing would not be leaving anytime soon, so they could only stay here for a while longer. Besides, Yu Siqing's senses were so sharp. As long as she had revealed a little bit of her aura, Yu Siqing would be able to sense it immediately. Therefore, in order for Yu Siqing to be completely at ease, they could only wait here. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen nodded gently. Let's wait for now. Right now, they simply couldn't act rashly. Otherwise, not only would they be captured by Yu Siqing, but Yu Siqing would also discover the secret of the Chaos Ring. the consequences would be unimaginable. Yu Siqing had been standing at the spot where Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang had been standing. In the end, she returned to the house. However, not long after Yu Siqing returned to the house, she appeared outside again. However, Yu Siqing noticed that no one else had appeared. Seeing this, Yu Siqing finally relaxed a little. If that was the case, what happened before was probably just her hallucination. After all, no one would disappear in front of her at such a fast speed. Even if she was a peerless expert, she would at least notice a ray of light when she left. But now, it had disappeared without a trace. It was too strange. Yu Siqing pondered silently for a moment before finally leaving. At this time, Lan Qingyan slowly walked over from afar and said with a smile, "Great Aunt, the banquet has already started. We should also go." They had always been people of high status, so every time they appeared, they would be the last ones to appear. Chapter 2023. Hearing Lan Qingyan's words, Yu Siqing shook her head and said, "Nothing, let's go." Seeing this, Lan Qingyan looked at Yu Siqing suspiciously, but didn't say anything in the end. She couldn't understand what her great-aunt had been doing all this time. Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun had been staying in the Chaos Ring, thinking about when Yu Siqing would dispel her worries. If they appeared too early, they would definitely be discovered by Yu Siqing. If they appeared too late, then they would miss the best opportunity. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun's hearts were heavy. There are only a few minutes left before the banquet starts. Yu Siqing probably won't stay here for long. I'll go out and take a look later. Don't go out first, Deep Beichun slowly said. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but frown. How can that be? Just as Mo Yunju has said before, even if I'm caught, they won't dare to do anything to me. Moreover, with Master's relationship, it's easy for me to find out the reason. You must not appear. Don't make me worry. Deep Beichun held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand tightly. If I'm really caught, you could take the opportunity to tell Master the news. There won't be a problem. Deep Beichun's voice was serious and dignified. The situation now was very serious. He mustn't be impulsive. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally understood the meaning of Deep Beichun's words. After thinking for a moment, she nodded. You have to be more careful. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang agreed to his suggestion, Deep Beichun was relieved. A few minutes passed in the blink of an eye. Deep Beichun gave Bailey Hongzhuang a look and left the Chaos Ring. Bailey Hongzhuang saw Deep Beichun leave and couldn't help but intertwine her hands tightly together. She only hoped that Deep Beichun would be fine. After Deep Beichun left the Chaos Ring, he didn't see Yu Siqing's figure, but the candles in the room were still lit. Noticing this, Deep Beichun's eyes, which were as deep as the sea, were filled with a touch of doubt. In the distance, the sound of music and music sounded. The banquet had begun. Only, he didn't know if Yu Siqing actually attended the banquet. Deep Beichun stood in place and waited for a moment, but did not dare to use his spiritual power to investigate the situation in the room. His strength was not Yu Siqing's opponent. Once his mind spread out, Yu Siqing would notice it immediately. Therefore, Deep Beichun waited in place for a while. When he didn't notice any movement, he walked closer to Yu Siqing's house. After Deep Beichun left with Bailey Hongzhuang, her heart was hanging in the air. She didn't hear any news from Deep Beichun for a long time, and her face became more and more unsightly. Deep Beichun noticed that Yu Siqing didn't come out of the house despite his movements. His eyes lit up. Looks like Yu Siqing has already left. Deep Beichun was relieved and immediately contacted Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang originally thought that Deep Beichun was in danger, but after hearing Deep Beichun's words, her mood couldn't help but rise from hell to heaven. Hongzhuang, Yu Siqing has already left. We can start moving. Deep Beichun, Yu Siqing hurriedly said. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang Yu Siqing appeared beside Deep Beichun.